Oh man, good morning, everyone. It's a little chilly today. But I can do it full total warfare. We're going total war on discourse. I will do this forever. I will not stand down. I will not give in. I don't want to waste this little ditty on too few listeners, so I'm going to wait a sec. But I was reading some Mark Twain last night, and I found his version of his parody of the Battle Hymn of the Republic to make it about empire. And I was thinking about how it's kind of like the first punk rock song. So I was gonna play my rendition of it once I see at least that there's a couple more people here. I don't know how this is gonna sound. I just gave it a shot this morning, but we'll see. And then we can get into whatever. I guess we can go into debates and shit again, if need be. I'm fine with that. Ugh. All right, I'll just go for it. Let's see. Mine eyes have seen the orgy of the launching of the sword. He's searching out the hoardings where the stranger's wealth is stored. His loot is fateful lightnings, where his woe and death are scored. His lust is marching on. I've seen him in the watchfires of 100 circling camps. They've builded him an altar in the eastern dews and damps. I've read his doomful mission by the dim and flaring lamps. His night is marching on. I've read his bandit gospel, written burnished rows of steel. As you deal with my pretensions, so with you my wrath shall deal. Let the faithless son of freedom crush the patriot with his heel. Lo, greed is marching on. We've legalized the strumpet and are guarding her retreat. Greed is seeking out commercial souls before his judgment seat. Oh, be swift, ye clods, to answer him. Be jubilant, my feet. Our God is marching on. And sordid slime harmonious, Greed was born in yonder ditch, with a longing in his bosom, and for others' goods an itch. As Christ died to make men holy, let us die to make them rich. Our God is marching on. So that's Mark Twain's version of the Battle Hymn of the Republic from 1903. I think it's pretty badass. He's actually talking about the legalization, like we have legalized the strumpet and are guarding her retreat. Is about in Manila, the government placed a certain industry under the protection of the American flag. Pretty interesting, huh? In Manila. Anyway, I was going to read one more thing from him, which I think is very telling. I think it says a lot about the MAGA communist project, at least what I've been trying to say about it, especially. And that is this, which is it's very short. It's not going to take too long to do here. It's called Christian Citizenship, and it is from the year 1905, so 2 years later. Twain's really like this is like some later Twain. Twain gets really blackpilled over the years. If you read some Mark Twain, but this is Christian Citizenship by Mark Twain. Is there such a thing as Christian citizenship? No, but it could be created. The process would be quite simple and not productive of hardship to anyone. It will be conceded that every man's first duty is to God, and it will also be conceded, and with strong emphasis, that a Christian's first duty is to God. It then follows, as a matter of course, that it is his duty to carry out his Christian code of morals to the polls and vote them. Whenever he shall do that, he will not find himself voting for an unclean man, a dishonest man. Whenever a Christian votes, he votes against God or for him. And he knows this quite well. God is an issue in every election. He is a candidate in the person of every clean nominee on every ticket. His purity and his approval are there to be voted for or voted against, and no fealty to party can absolve his servant from his higher and more exacting fealty to him. He takes precedence of party. Duty to him is above every claim of party. If Christians should vote their duty to God at the polls, they would carry every election and do it with ease. They would elect every clean candidate in the United States and defeat every soiled one. Their prodigious power would be quickly realized and recognized, and afterward, there would be no unclean candidates upon any ticket, and graft would cease. No church organization can be found in the country that would elect men of foul character to be its shepherd, its treasurer, and superintendent of its Sunday school. It would be revolted at the idea. It would consider such an election an insult to God. Yet every Christian congregation in the country elects foul men to public office, while quite aware that this also is an open and deliberate insult to God, who cannot approve and does not approve the placing of the liberties and the well being of his children in the hands of infamous men. It is the Christian congregations that are responsible for the filling out of our public offices with criminals, for the reason that they could prevent it if they chose to do it. They could prevent it without organizing a league, without framing a platform, without making any speeches or passing any resolutions. In a word, without concert of any kind. They could accomplish it by each individual resolving to vote for God at polls, that is to say, vote for the candidate whom God would approve. Can a man imagine such a thing as God becoming a Republican or a Democrat and voting for a criminal or a blackguard merely because party loyalty required it? Then we can imagine that a man can improve upon God's attitude in this matter and by help of professional politicians invent a better policy. God has no politics but cleanliness and honesty and is good enough for men. A man's second duty is to his family. There was a time when a clergyman's duty to his family required him to be his congregation's political slave and vote his congregation's ticket in order to safeguard the food and shelter of his wife and children. But that time is gone by. We have the secret ballot now, and a clergyman can vote for God. He can also plead with his congregation to do the like. Perhaps, we cannot be sure, the congregation would probably inquire whom he was going to vote for, and if he stood upon his manhood and answered that they had no Christian right, which is the same as saying no moral right, and of course no legal right, to ask the question, it is conceivable, not to say certain, that they would dismiss him and be much offended at his proposing to be a man as well as a clergyman. Still, there are clergymen who are so situated as to be able to make the experiment. It would be worthwhile to try it. If the Christians of America could be persuaded to vote God in a clean ticket, it would bring about a moral revolution that would be incalculably beneficent. It would save the country, a country whose Christians have betrayed it and are destroying it. The Christians of Connecticut sent bulkily to the Senate. They sent to the legislature the men who elected him. These two crimes they could have prevented. They did not do it, and upon them rests the shame and the responsibility. Only one clergyman remembered his Christian morals and his duty to God and stood bravely by both. Mr. Smith is probably an outcast now, but such a man as that can endure ostracism, and such a man as that is likely to possess the treasure of a family that can endure it with him and be proud to do it. I kissed the hem of his garment. 4 years ago, Greater New York had two tickets in the field, one clean, the other dirty, with a single exception. An unspeakable ticket with that lonely exception. One half of the Christians voted for that foul ticket and against God and the Christian code of morals, putting loyalty to party above loyalty to God and honorable citizenship, and they came within a fraction of electing it. Whereas, if they had stood by their professed morals, they would have buried it out of sight. Christianity was on trial then, it is on trial now, and nothing important is on trial except Christianity. It was on trial in Philadelphia and failed, in Pennsylvania and failed, in Rhode Island and failed, in Connecticut and failed, in New York and failed, in Delaware and failed, in every town and country and state and county and state, and was recreant to its trust. It has effusively busied itself with the small matters of charity and benevolence, and has looked on, indifferent, while its country was sinking lower and lower in repute and drifting further and further toward moral destruction. It is the one force that can save, and it sits with folded hands. In Greater New York, it will presently have an opportunity to elect or defeat some straight, clean, honest men of the Sterling Jerome stamp and some of the Tammany kind. The Christian vote, and the Christian vote alone, will decide the contest. It and it alone is master of the situation and lord of the result. True today, true as it ever was. Christians in this country are the majority. The majority of people who profess to even being spiritual profess to being Christians as well, or at least to having some relation to Christ. Christianity is the religion of the proletariat. Christianity is proletarian ethics. Christianity is proletarian morality. Christianity is a proletarian faith. Jesus Christ was a proletarian. We believe that God became a proletarian to free man in time. That is what Christianity believes. If you vote your Christian conscience, you have no choice but to be a communist. What else are you going to do? Vote for neocons, Republicans, and Democrats? Is God a Republican or a Democrat, or is God a communist? What is God? God is an authoritarian communist. God is an authoritarian communist. What else could he be? You think God's a fascist? If you think God's a fascist, then you're a Satanist. It's that simple. Now, I wanted to argue and debate with someone about this, about anything. I'm sure I'll have some taker eventually. Usually, they're not so brave as to come on like others have, but usually the ones brave enough to come on are not seeking anything but to shriek and throw a little fit and tantrum, as is so often the case. So, if you wanted to pass this around and find anyone who wants to scrap, I'm down. But I'll put Space LaRouche. You're always here. You're always here. You're always popping on. I'll put you on for a sec just because I'm lighting a ciggy.
Hello?
What's up, man?
Oh, good morning. Hey, so one thing I guess maybe we can debate about, except I don't know if I have necessarily a super firm position, but is education. Because if we want to reindustrialize, if we want to, also you were just talking about obviously, our actual culture and our, our faith. How do you believe that, we can educate the people? Because people have been subjugated by all this, pop culture and all this shit, and our
You got to
education is
make a
horrible.
better product.
What do you mean by that? A better product?
Yeah, if you can't educate them better than this miseducation they've been getting, if you can't create something, if you're saying it's like from entertainment or whatever, like, oh, real education is too boring, well, maybe you need to make real education exciting and interesting. That's what I try to do here. I'm trying to amp people up. I'm reading an esoteric Mark Twain writings from over 100 years ago because I'm trying to amp people up about them. I'm trying to connect it to their daily lives right now and show how all of this stuff that just seems like it's like trivial. All this book could just sit on a library shelf for eternity, and everyone could say, "Oh yeah, Mark Twain wrote a lot, Huckleberry Finn, etc." But if you go and you actually read Mark Twain, you try to understand Mark Twain and his engagement with the times, he's engaging with the same issues we're engaging with today. Nothing ultimately has changed that much, right? That's like we have to bring these things into light, into the realm of the real as they are now, so that we can show how they reveal truths about the conditions that we all face.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with that. I'm just wondering how we could do that on like a quicker and larger scale. Because I mean, for instance,
You
with all
can't.
the Christians, like a lot of Christians today,
Well, what you do
they're
is you spread consciousness. You spread the revolutionary consciousness, and people have to go do it. Go do it. Like I'm saying this, but you should go do this too. You go have this. Like you have to face the people yourself, right? Everyone has to go do this. If we're saying that this is what we want, then we want everyone to be doing this, and we want more and more people to be doing this, and eventually we want everyone to be doing it.
yeah, yeah. Well, certainly, I think that is what is developing. But it's hard, because especially for instance with Christians, my father is a pastor as well as he
Read him that.
teaches
Read him that.
wicked
Go
hermeneutics.
say, hey, I'm going to read this thing called Mark Twain's on Christian citizenship. What do you disagree with this? Like, do you think God is a Republican or a Democrat?
Yeah, that's a good idea. I think that I should do that. But one question I have in particular about this is, so many of the Christians I know, including my family, are really. I feel like they're caught up in these eschatological ideas of like the end of times, and they don't believe that we actually can have peace on earth, or that you can fix things. Like they
Well,
believe, oh,
then
things are
just go
just
to the
negative
Bible
and
and tell
bad.
them that these things are promised. That these things are promised to us. That these are like things that Christians are supposed to be creating. They're not something like they have this. They've been demoralized by their anti-Christian uh, pseudo pastors and these people who just worship capital and pretend to worship God in public. They've been brainwashed by these people. They've been demoralized by these people to think that Christians aren't supposed to have any active engagement with the world. They're just supposed to passively do nothing. They're just supposed to accept things as they come. They're not supposed to, they want to do nothing. They want to just be left alone. But they're supposed to
Yeah, I
be
mean, it
the
seems like
vanguard.
there's this belief that's very common that God is the one who's in control, which I agree with. But at the same time, it's like they think that it's just gonna happen. Like the plan of God is just gonna.
Well, that they're right in the sense that like providence unfolds, like history is unfolding. All of this is going to happen, whether or not they decide to contribute. What you need to do is put the fear of God in them and say, which side are you on? Are you working for that, or are you not doing anything? Are you in the middle? Are you one of the people in the middle that who God spits out? Are you even not even against it? It's almost better for if they were just ardently against it and they were like, I love the Antichrist, because then they'd at least be revealing the stakes. They could at least side with the goats. They could be like, I'm a goat, I'm a Satanist, etc. If they were open about their opposition to building this project in reality, then they would no longer recognize themselves as Christians. They would be turn against Christ explicitly. And so they're going to sort themselves in this way. Maybe I think a lot of the fear is that, for instance, I argue with these people and then they come around. I'm like, are you siding with the goats or the sheep? Like, do you want to line up with CIA agents and prison guards and bankers? And they say, yes. Well, if they agree with me. And I say, okay, well, we're just sorting here. We're just revealing what was already the case. Maybe that's radicalizing them, as someone said, into those positions. But those are the positions I'm pushing them to sort themselves on this line. We have to draw a hard line in the sand. That's our job. Our
Well,
job is to do that.
another thing, Logo, is in that Mark Twain piece. It says, actually vote for the Christian choice, not just a Republican or a Democrat. But there's not many of those around today.
Yeah, so then you don't vote. If you're
Well,
asked to
how
vote
do
for a criminal from the Democrats and a criminal from the Republicans, you don't vote for either of them. You vote for a third party.
I agree, but but how do we get up a new coalition of people who actually are the Christian choice rather than these
Go
Republicans
out
and
and talk
Democrats?
to
How
them.
do
You have
we
to build
educate
it.
the people to build? Okay, yeah, you're right. Well,
Like
that's
it's
what we're
work.
hoping
It's
to do
work.
here at
It's
the
work, and it's
Blue Show.
uncompensated mostly. It's uncompensated work mostly, right? Like if you want to be a servant of the people, like does that mean that your life gets to be comfortable and cozy and nice? Like was Jesus Christ's life cozy and comfortable and nice? Were the apostles' lives comfy and cozy and nice? Were all the saints martyred by the Antichrist? Were their lives nice and cozy? Like no, you are suffering. We suffer on behalf of the people.
Interesting, interesting. I agree. I agree. I'm not sure I have much more to talk about. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, man. Thanks for coming on. I'll wait for someone who's got something ornery, someone more ornery, someone who's looking for a scrap. All it takes is for me to stand still. They appear themselves. Can I talk? Can I speak of the guy and have him appear this time? Otherwise, this is going to be a short one. I could also read that. I was going to read. I've got Nausgaard's In the Land of the Cyclops here, which is his essay about the Swedes, the perfidious Swedes, which I could read as well. I'll give it a bit, but if I see a lot of thumbs up on that, I can just read it now. I would recommend people read this sort of literature, though. Like literature is philosophy. Like literature contains philosophical content. You know what I'm saying? Like the best philosophy is written in parables. Parables are the like preferred form of revelation of truth, as God says. If you are a Christian, of course, Jesus spoke in parables. He told little tales. He told tales where the meaning had to be discerned by someone who could see, people with the ears to hear and eyes to see, were the people who could understand his parables. To others, they seemed to be mysteries. All right, I've got Hamdi. Humpty Dumpty. It's looking dumpty. Howdy.
I don't know. I had this idea or like something I've heard. Okay.
Do you want to argue, or are you here? Like, I just want to know
Yeah,
what your goal
I
is
want.
in being
Okay,
on.
so basically, I'm the type of person who thinks out loud. Okay, and so I was like, or like when something grabs me, an idea grabs me, I think about it, and then I try to like like think, does it make sense? Doesn't not make sense? Okay, so I want to tell you.
You're a human being. I
No, I
understand.
mean, like, I want to tell you about something I've heard during a podcast about, existence and life and whatever. And I wanted to see if, like, maybe you catch the flow in that thinking or something. Yeah, that's it.
Okay, go for
Okay.
it.
So there was this podcast, and the one of the guys said that there's always going to be suffering in the world. Okay, and uh, he gave an analogy like a balloon. So if you squeeze a part of the balloon, like the pain, it's gonna pop somewhere else in the world. Okay, and then he proceeded and said that as long as people want to own more than their hands can hold, that there will always be corruption or
Yeah,
suffering or
as long
whatever.
as people worship mammon, as long as people worship mammon, and they hold the love of money above all things, which is the root of all evil,
Yeah,
as it says in the scriptures,
yeah.
then yes.
And so he's like, because he gave the example that if you, for example, own like a treasure, for example, like let's say in ancient times, you need and like you don't, you can't hold it all in your hand, right? So you have it somewhere else, and so you need other people to take care of it, and so you have to make a community, or like you have to pay people, or like you have to and you have to pay them in order to protect that investment, and then these people, when they get paid.
Do you notice that this is a story from the perspective of a creditor?
I don't know. Yeah, this is basically. So, what do you think about this? Is it true or is it?
It sounds like bourgeois class consciousness, where it's like, well, there's suffering everywhere, but I'm just trying to secure my investments.
Okay? And so it's about like, what's the solution? If is this really how the world is? Like, do you think that we are all just trying to, like, not us?
That's how this world is. That's how this world is, but
Mm,
that's not the political economy of heaven. We're either trying to make earth into heaven, as the Lord's Prayer commands us to do, or we're not. Or we worship the God of this world and we're just trying to receive our rewards in this world. We're not storing our treasures in heaven. We're just seeking material gain in this aspect of life, right? This delimited plane of existence.
okay, I agree. And how, like, since this system or this world or this God of this world is so ingrained in the day-to-day world, like
Yeah, it's the empire of
should
the
our
Antichrist, my
yeah,
friend.
yeah, how are we supposed to be off the grid, or are we, like, right now, for example, we're using Twitter, right? And it's like a big multinational, and Twitter is evil, blah blah blah. We've said that a million times, but maybe if it wasn't for Twitter, maybe I wouldn't be talking to you right now.
Jesus says you must make a friend of the mammon of unrighteousness. So if these things are unrighteous, we must find a way to, as he says also, to have the devil's party war against itself. So for instance, would you say, someone who is making the Twitter medium better, or am I actually breaking down a lot of people's experience of the Twitter discourse? My goal here is to destroy the discourse. My goal
Yeah,
here is to use this power, which is, fundamentally, Twitter probably shouldn't exist. We should probably have a public service for this type of thing, such that the profits accrued from our intellectual labor here, our discourse, our free speech, is not monopolized by a particular party or interest, right? Like, that would be the ideal.
right.
Would be that, like, we turn Twitter or whatever this sort of service is into a public good as opposed to a private interest. So there is no public good in that sense for me to use. The internet itself is ostensibly that public good, but the platforms on top of that have been monopolized. So I have no other option but to work within this medium. We could call this an unrighteous mammon, right? And
Yeah.
I'm trying to use it to defeat itself.
You are very articulate, by the way. I wish I could speak like you do. uh, but like, I guess in simpler terms, or like maybe this is what I understand. This is basically what you would say to someone who tells you, uh, like, like in Italy we say like, you are a comunista with the iPhone, or like you're a communist with an iPhone. Like, how are you a communist if you have an iPhone?
I'd say, yeah, hell yeah. Do you think there'll be
Yeah.
no iPhones under communism? Like, I want to break up. I want Apple to become a public good. Like, I want the production of these things to be a public good, if that makes sense. Like, I don't want the profits accrued from these things to be a private interest. I'm not one of these like feudal degrowth anarcho feudalists who are like, we need to eliminate all technology. I'm not Ted Kaczynski, you know. I'm not saying, oh, we got to eliminate all technology because it's all evil. We just need to go back to like,
Is that
hunter
the guy, that
gatherers.
Unabomber, or
Yeah, that's
right?
the Unabomber.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I'm against that. I think we can use all tools. Tools are not good in and of themselves, right? Like you could say, like they show in the Bible, sometimes people go this far, that the children of Cain were the ones who invented musical instruments and weaponry and all sorts of these things, that these things derive from this negative aspect of like the mimetic conquest of like desire, right? Like the mimetic
Mm.
conflict over desire is what Cain represents. But Cain is also saved. You see, the Bible is full of paradoxes that are illuminating because Cain is saved. Cain is not to be made a scapegoat of. These people who claim that they make scapegoats of nobody and they just want to go back to when everything was hunky dory in primitive communism or something. In the Garden of Eden, we're just going to return. We're going to march right into the Garden of Eden backwards through anti-historical progress. They aren't recognizing that all of these things, all of the evils in the world that have existed, will be redeemed in their ultimate end. That life itself, though it is full and replete with suffering, is ultimately good. That life itself is good, even if it's life of suffering.
I agree. Um, Speaking of, can we go on, or shall I like
Yeah,
go?
we can go on.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. Fun fact about me: so I was raised under my mom is a Christian, and my father was a Muslim, and throughout my life, I've never since, luckily, or I don't know if luckily, both my parents, they never like pushed any of their religions into me, okay, but they weren't also like atheistic, and so, for example, at school, let's say, I was in a Christian Franciscan school, the Franciscan movement.
Yeah.
Yeah, the ones that they're very simple. They don't. They wear like cheap clothes, and they speak to animals. And this is like surface level. But I mean, like, they're good. I like them, anyways.
Yeah, the
So when
Franciscans were kind of a proletarian element against some of the other parts of the Catholic Church at the time because they were saying, you have all these priests who were just dressed up in pomp and circumstance,
yes,
wearing these like
exactly. That's why I love
robes
them.
covered
And
in jewels, and they were
yes,
like Christians are supposed to be like in and of the people, right?
yes,
Of
yes.
like the
They're very
proletariat.
humble, and because in Jordan there is the Mount Nebo. It's like it's like one of their headquarters, right? It's where the mountain where Moses died. I don't know if you know this historical thing. Like,
Yeah,
no, no, not the mountain where they say that where he saw the promised land. You know that place?
yeah.
They call it Ain Musa, Eye of Moses. And okay, I'm drifting away. Anyway, so going back to the other thing about school, and so I always interacted with Christians, right, and Muslims. And in school, I was in a Christian school, but it has also Muslims. And there was this thing where, like, during a religion class, for example, the Christians would go to with the priest or the Franciscan the guy, and they would go to like to the church upstairs in the yeah, and then the Muslims they would bring us another teacher, right? And then something interesting was that maybe this is wrong or right, maybe we can debate, but like this school specifically did not allow any veiled women student, I mean, to study at this school. But it wasn't like a rule, like we didn't announce it, but like there were no veiled women there, right? And I knew, like, sometimes I would see like students sign up or like do an interview to get signed to this private school, this and I would know 100%, even if they were like the smartest or like the better or whatever, because they were veiled, they wouldn't allow them because they wanted to maintain this certain, let's say, atmosphere. And also the teacher, if the Muslim teacher was a woman, right, and she had to be unveiled. And that was funny to my other fellow Arabic students from other schools. When I told them that my religion Muslim teacher was unveiled, they would be like, what the fuck, like, it doesn't make sense. But for me, like, it always, like, it really helped me uh, what I'm saying, all this, it really helped me to like, because technically legally I have to be a Muslim, because in my country, you inherit the religion of your father, and in documents up until recently, the your religion shows up on your ID, right? And so usually I've always like due to these factors, I've always saw this contrast between me and my peers, where they viewed, like, the old classic, like us versus them, or like they viewed Christians as like something external, and them as being home or whatever. But I felt like I had a home, right? And so I think this is what made me read. Like, I used to read both the Quran and the Bible. The Bible not so much, I'm gonna be honest, but I used to attend the choir. I used to sing with the Christian choir, and I remember the school used to call my parents and be worried, like, is he allowed to do this? And my parents like, no, it's fine, it's whatever. And so my question is, right, when it comes to education, do you think there is something there, like, should we teach multiple different religions, or is that scary? Is that a
I
slippery
think
slope?
I think we should teach it as much as possible. I mean, I don't have any real issues with like. I want people to read more. If anything, the real problem is nobody learns fucking anything. Like nobody's learning how to appreciate anything. They're trying to like they're actually eliminating people reading literature in schools in general now across our public education curricula in America anyway, because that's not useful for job training. They'd rather train people to learn how to read news articles and how to read memos and how to reply to a corporate email chain. They don't really care if they're capable of understanding the parables of the New Testament. That's not what they're trying to teach them. That's not a skill to them.
Yes, but like, I agree, uh, but like, how do I, from my experience, at least in my day-to-day life, I find that I rarely see people who are nobody is completely objective or impartial, but like, who try to be honest when describing something they don't like, or a religion they don't like, or like, they strawman the fuck out of it, or like,
Yeah. No, I
yeah.
mean people are
So
fallen,
that's the problem, I think. Yeah,
Yeah,
what?
people are fallen, but that's always been the case. I mean, it's like has always been a struggle, and like you're not called upon to just conform or fit in with these people. You're called upon to do the good. So like that
Yeah,
means not doing that. So like you can't change what other people do. You can convince them like through your example, but that's all you can do. All you can do is provide an example of another way.
I agree. I agree. One last thing, and then uh, but another thing that attaches to this thing about different religions, and like not having one singular identity, is that for the most, for me personally, but I suppose a lot of people who had the same experience as me, we tend to have a problem with. I didn't like knowing what we exactly want, or what we are really, because it's like they always teach you that you have to be coherent and consistent, right? But for me personally, like, sometimes I've been listening to a podcast or reading something, and I read this, and I'm like, this is it, this, right? And I get like obsessed with this, and I'm like, oh, this makes sense, this makes sense, this makes sense, right? Like, for example, the first time I read the 12 Steps, the one of Jordan Peterson, I was like, oh my God, right? And then later on, I came back, I was like, oh, this is cringe. Then I came back and like, oh, this is good. Or like, I would be listening like to some Islamic thing, and then I would like, you know what? Like, maybe in this culture, like this, maybe too much progressivism is bad, whatever, you know. So. Like, but I feel like people who are like, so it's like, it's kind of suffering, like, it's very painful for me, because like, I keep doubting myself,
Doubt
and
is the
and and
enemy,
and,
man.
and
Doubt
like,
is the enemy. Doubt is to be cast out. Faith is what destroys doubt. Always have faith.
yes, this is like, yeah. And so in the end, I just like stopped trying to explain like what I am. I was like, fuck it, I'm just gonna be what I am, and I just do it, and see where it goes from there. So I,
That's
I
what I'm
have
doing,
faith,
man.
and
That's all we can
yeah,
do.
yeah. Thank you.
For sure, man.
That was all.
All right, it's been nice
Thank
talking
you.
to you, man.
Thanks.
All right. Got Bromo Butterfly here. What's up? Let me know what you want to do. What's your goal here? I should start doing this more. Just being like when I add someone, I'm just be like, what do you want to accomplish? But that's what I want to know.
Oh, hey. Sorry, I was
What's up,
muted for
man?
a sec. Hey, can you hear me?
Howdy.
Hey,
Yep, I can
yeah,
hear you. What's up?
cool. So you were talking about like basically people on the who were like, we're the goats, we're on the side of Satan, uh,
Yeah,
10
the
minutes
sheep
back
and
or
the
so.
goats.
Yeah, and around me, that's like kind of what I feel is the norm.
Yeah, it is here under the empire of the Antichrist.
But like, the people who they'll like tell you, like I am a Satanist, they'll like tell
Yeah,
you things like that. But then
yeah.
when you know them, you know that like it's not actually really true.
They're kind of trying to. That's like an aspirational thing for them. They're not actually truly Satanists in their hearts a lot of the time,
Yeah.
but they want to be.
And I think
You see,
it's just
like
because
so,
like they
sort of like
hate
sort of
life,
like
like they
well,
hate
it's
their
like they
lives.
hate their lives, and they think that they can do this in order to receive goods in this world.
Right. They still think of themselves
You've
as.
got a little bit of an echo.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm in
If
the
you could move
car.
that away, just yeah. It's just it's hard. It's getting in my ears. It's making me feel. I'm hearing myself talk.
Sorry about that.
It's all right.
Yeah. I think that they still think of themselves as good people because I mean they just have this sort of received morality of the sort of like state religion, but they also, I guess, this kind of dovetails with like what you were talking about with like retail work making you into a fascist, which is something that like I've experienced.
Yeah, they harbor a ton of bigotry.
Yeah, I've experienced that firsthand. Like talking to a friend the other day who like is a waitress, and I mean it's a hard job. Like I'm not gonna say that like it's not hard.
Yeah, I mean I've done it.
Yeah,
I know what it's like.
but
It's also a really nice job.
it can be. Yeah, I mean she makes
If you do
really
a
good
good
money.
job. Yeah, you make really good money if you do really good service.
But it really makes you like hate the people around you and like become
Depends
prejudiced.
on how you are, right? I think it provides the temptation of that.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not necessary. You can fight that temptation.
Oh, for sure.
Like I love being a bartender. I mostly got annoyed at other service workers I worked with because they were doing a shitty job. But I didn't really get mad at my customers. I liked my customers. They were paying me. I wanted them to like me.
Yeah. Well, I think in certain cases, like management plays a role in that. Like sometimes the management like creates a situation where like it's sort of inevitable that the work.
But you could advocate on behalf of your customer against management.
Yeah.
Like you can't do that. It might come at a cost to you. It might be more.
That's what it comes.
Like if so.
Yeah, people don't want to pay that cost.
Oh man, the echo is getting. I gotta mute you for a sec so I can just speak. All right, cool. Oh God, the echo is getting to my. I was like making me feel insane. Okay, so I could give you an example, right? When I was working as a bartender, right, there'd be cases, right, where someone would be like, "Okay, I ordered this beer, but I don't like it," right? And if I was like, "Okay, well, you just have to pay for it," well, what I would do is I would go to my manager and I say, "Hey, this person didn't like this thing. Can I refund them that?" And they'd say, "Yeah," and I would, and they'd be happy because I provided the service that they wanted. They didn't know that they didn't want the thing that they ordered. That's not really their fault. Like, I'm trying to help them have a good experience. Like, I actually liked this place that I worked at, right? I wanted the people who came to like it, and I wanted them to like my service particularly, so that they would like at times like request me as their server. And then when I had regulars and things, they would tip me above and beyond like 20% a lot of the time. I made like $100 tip once just because I talked to this guy about like his problems, like I like you can actually like be rewarded for providing a better service. But if you're like in a hyper mechanized form of this service or whatever, let's say you're the Starbucks barista, it doesn't really matter. You're getting paid the same no matter what service you provide. Like your tips aren't even a substantial part of your payouts because nobody's really tip. Like how much do you tip? Like do you tip a Starbucks worker that much? Like I don't know. I think the tipping thing is a little fucked, but it makes sense in another sense where it's like if you're running a small business, right? Like let's say you're a food truck and you're manning your food truck as this sort of nano business or whatever, and you have a tip jar, it's like people know, like people are going to tip you if you provide a good service. Um, I basically live off of tips, right? Like people are just tipping me. Like my Patreon's basically a tip jar. And so I'm trying to like advocate on behalf of my customers. I'm trying to provide them good content, you could say. like this. Like I'm serving them that content, right? I didn't produce Mark Twain's writing. Like I did read it. I am providing some more, I don't know, some discourse about it, etc. But that's all I'm doing. Like it's already out there. Like I didn't produce anything, any surplus value in doing this. Like you could say perhaps that I'm producing surplus value for Twitter, but that doesn't really make sense in my opinion. Like I volunteered to publish my stuff on this platform just out of my own expediency, right? And they are the ones monopolizing my like free gift of my speech to make money off of. I'm trying to make money off of, but they make more money off of people using their service and advertising. I don't make a cut of the advertising on Twitter. Maybe I should. Maybe I shouldn't. I think that if you're actually trying to be a service worker, you should want to be a service. You should want to provide a good service, and like that should be how you receive. That's like should be something that is something you want to do, and not merely something that you've been forced into out of circumstance. Which is why I'm saying I want to free retail workers to do more productive labor, more meaningful labor. I don't want to force people to like work at Marshalls and Starbucks for their entire lives just so that they don't die. And I don't think that just giving them a union is going to do that. I don't think that's enough. I think it's reactionary. That's why the biggest argument people have against me is that they're just saying that I'm not concerned with them. I'm not concerned with their well-being is what they say. Like they are suffering, right? And so I must support anything that says that it's going to eliminate some of their suffering. But I don't think that's true. I don't think that makes sense. That's sort of like, a methadone clinic or whatever. It's like, well, I don't want people to be heroin addicts. I'm trying to eliminate the core problem here. I don't think just having methadone clinics is going to eliminate the central problem of this, the fucking opiate epidemic, for instance, right? Like just giving people methadone clinics is like, harm reduction or whatever, however you want to put it in that sense. But it's not solving the fundamental problem. And I would argue that the creation of these clinics, et cetera, ends up just creating an infrastructure for the further like permanence of this crisis. Because then you're going to always have, if you always have methadone clinics, then you're always going to need people to use them. Like it just feeds off of itself. You can see this in Thomas Pynchon has an interesting cycle about this particular problem in Inherent Vice, where with the Golden Fang. And the Golden Fang in Inherent Vice is a bank that is also it's like a mysterious capital enterprise, which is importing drugs, mostly heroin, from the Golden Triangle, where a lot of heroin is grown, a lot of poppies are grown. It's importing that, getting these hippies, et cetera, addicted to heroin, and then also they are invested in and run their own rehab service called like the Chrysler. It's like means Golden Fang in Latin. It's all an inside joke in that sense. And so you get these people addicted, and then you also get that you pipeline them into your service to rehabilitate them. And that is what this type of that's what this ultimately is instead of getting people to have more meaningful jobs, it's just giving them a rehab center for for them to address some of the harms that come from this position that they probably shouldn't even be in or shouldn't be forced into being in the first place. And that's a more nuanced point, right? But it's like if there's some like these people, they don't have any patience or a good faith to try to understand what I'm saying. Instead of thinking like, is it possible that I'm motivated by the good in the same way that they conceive of themselves as motivated by the good? No, they think I'm motivated by evil. But nobody is motivated by evil. People are motivated by false conceptions of the good. People are manipulated by half goods, by seeming goods, right? Seeming goods. These people are motivated by seeming good, but not by the good. They don't know what the good is because they've been misled about it. So by people whose job it is to mislead them. And those people who mislead them, they are also in the business of seeming good. And that is their goal. Their goal is to mislead these people. They don't know they're misleading people. As Christ says, they know not what they do. These people, they know not what they do. They do not have self-consciousness of their own role in these processes because they don't know the truth. Like you can't blame them for not being self-conscious of how this works because they're not. Like nobody's told them, nobody's taught them. They've been, manipulated by so many different forces of the seeming good into themselves trying to seem good. And they are motivated by their sense of good seeming. For instance, people will also defend people like Soros, Bill Gates, etc. The two guys that that are used by like MAGA Republicans, especially to represent the interests of the bourgeois class. they say, well, those people are just doing like what good, aren't they doing good? Like they're doing good things. Like what is wrong with the things that they're doing? But if you look at the actual effects of the things that they're doing, as opposed to the stated intentions, the seeming of what they are doing, they're not doing good. And in their hearts, they may believe themselves to be great saints. Bill Gates thinks of himself that he's working for the best interests of everybody, right? He thinks he's a philanthropist. These people think that they are in the right, that their seeming good is the good itself. They believe that what they're doing is true and good. Everyone believes that what they're doing is true and good. I believe that what I'm doing is true and good. I could also be wrong. I've been wrong before. I've thought that I've been doing something that I thought was good or for someone's good, and realized that it wasn't. That I was just trying to seem good in some sense, and that's a struggle that we all have. But the goal is to eventually reach like what is the good? Like what is the good? That is the question I kept asking the Sangria socialist yesterday, because he's saying, well, there's only use good and exchange good. There isn't a good in and of itself. He refused to speak on the good in and of itself because he doesn't know it. A lot of people don't know what the good is. You ask them, what is the good? Like, what is the good? This is what Socrates did. What is the good? It's the question that can cause the most conflict ever, is saying, what is the good? And everyone will describe their conceptions of the good, their conceptions of the seeming good, and how do you determine what is good from those? It's only through rigorous dialectic, only through this type of discourse and inquiry, only through through the cleansing fire, the refining fire of dialectics, parables, paradoxes, examples, stories, anecdotes, life in the world, experiences, knowledge. So it's a perpetual process. I'm trying to learn as well. I'm trying to teach as well. I don't know if I have an absolute conception of the good. I have faith as a Christian that Jesus is the absolute good, that there is a real good that exists in the world that we have access to, that it is written, the good, what we know to be the good has been revealed to us. And not by any of us in particular, but by a higher authority, by a transcendental authority, has entered into time to reveal the good in a manner to end the discourse over it, the debates over it that had gone on and on until the time of Christ. The purpose of Christ's ministry was that the good has been known now. We've revealed the good in its absolute form in a way that we can understand. None get to the Father, i.e., like the absolute good, but through the Son. So we know now. We've been revealed what we had revealed to us what the absolute good is, what the end of history is revealed in the book of Revelation. We know the good. That is what a Christian's faith is that they actually have known the good, that they know the good, they follow the good, they're servants of the good. That is the whole purpose of it. It's to end all of these debates. You say, is Christ Lord? Is Christ Lord over all creation? Is Christ the good? Do you follow Christ? That's the basis. That's the basis that we build upon. What other basis could you have? Harm reduction? Satan comes as a man of peace quite often. Jesus didn't come as a man of peace. Jesus said, I came not to bring peace. Jesus came to bring the good. I'll unmute you, man. I mean, you have to unmute yourself, I believe.
Oh, yeah, there we go. Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think that, well, even if people don't understand necessarily, probably because they just haven't read it, what like the good is in eternity, they do understand the good in relation to kind of the small scale, temporal, simple kinds of things. Like they know when
But is that
something's
the
wrong.
good or the seeming good a lot of the times? A lot of the times it's just the seeming good, right? Well, it's
Sometimes
like,
it is the seeming good.
it's good for
Sometimes it
me
is
to
the
be
seeming good.
comfortable. It's good for me to be comfortable. It's good for me to have to live off of my investments and not have to struggle to survive. Like that's
Yeah.
good for me. That's a particular good, but is that the good itself, like in eternity? I don't know. I don't think so.
But in terms of like if you see wrong being done or see injustice, and then you know that to correct it would be good. And I think what
Or they
tells you
see seeming injustice, but maybe they're wrong about their senses also. Maybe they're deceived. You know, people will say it's unjust,
true.
for instance. It's unjust they say we invent new injustices all the time. things that are, and like, you know what I mean? Like people are like, it's unjust for me to write anything or to say what I'm saying because I don't work a proletarian job. So it's unjust of me to say what I'm saying. It's unjust of me to say that service workers are tempted by these things, et cetera, that service workers and service worker unions do not promote the good for the proletariat, correct? Like that they are opposed, their goods are particularly opposed in the class war, for instance, and that I think that the ultimate good is on the side of the proletariat and not on the side of services, for instance. Right? I don't believe that priests represent Christ's ministry. You can see what priests did to Christ, but the proletariat followed Christ of his time. So people would suggest that I'm being unjust. I'm being unjust when I say these things, right? That's what I have 1,000 people quote tweeting me saying that I am unjust, that I am motivated by the evil, that not by the good, that I'm the one motivated by the seeming good, that I'm in the wrong for saying this, that I'm a hypocrite, etc., etc.
I really can't help but think that like most of the people who like constantly quote tweet you and like post all this weird shit all the time, like I think most normal people would look at that and just be like, this is like pathetic and weird,
It
and these
is. Most
people are
normal people
twisted
aren't
and
on
wrong.
Twitter. Most normal
Yeah, that's
people
true.
aren't on Twitter. Like when I describe what I actually deal with, the people, like normal people who are not extremely online, who like, you know, maybe at best they have like an Instagram that they'll post like a picture of like their mom on Mother's Day or whatever. You know what I mean? Like they're not that
Yeah.
engaged. They're not engaged with all of this. And like, you know, if they're consuming anything about the news, it's like kind of third party or whatever, you know, like after being filtered down a lot. Most normal people find that like the shit that happens on the internet is completely unhinged and demonic because it really is. Like it's completely psychotic. Like when I explain things that people have done to me on the internet, they're like, "What the fuck are you talking? That's insane." Most normal people aren't engaged in the Twitter discourse. It self-selects for a particular type of person, a typical person, a certain type of personality, someone who's motivated to be involved in such a thing in the first place. And most of the time, they're not involved. They're not motivated to involve themselves for anything good, but only for something seeming good.
Yeah.
Like what is it? Like they're like a lot of people. They're straight up. Their project on the internet is to seem good. Like is literally to virtue signal, as people say, right? Like that they're trying to like collect rent off of good seeming, and that's what I'm accused of doing all the time. That like what I'm doing isn't actually good; it's just seeming good, and that I'm just trying to make money off of seeming good, right?
Yeah, it's kind of a subculture. I think it sort of popped up around like 2014, right? When it was like I don't know when exactly people started moving from like something awful on all those forums to here, but like it seemed like there was just weird explosion of like
It's
suddenly
journalism.
yeah,
It's just
suddenly
journalism.
everything's
This
journalism.
happened with the printing press. This happened a long, long time ago. This is like what you could call modernity. This other person was, you know, saying modernity is like not fiction or something. But no, like modernity is when you have all of these people engaged in the construction of this discourse. Like more and more and more and more people are involved. Like that's you know, and at every time, all of these people are claiming, you know, that what their wares of speech in the discourse here are good, right? And that others, their competitors, are only seeming good. You know, everyone else is a grifter, but I'm authentic.
Yeah. When
It's
really
the
there's like
confidence
no
man.
real
If you read
distinction.
Melville's Confidence Man, that's all that it's about. It's like everyone trying, like you know, it's like people trying to gain confidence, and it's like that's I talked about that on the an earlier space.
Confidence meaning like literally confidence, like feeling confident or
No, confidence is what other people have in you. You can call it credentials or way credit, you know, whether or not people
oh
credit
yeah,
my opinion
yeah,
on anything, right? Or like my statements, whether or not they credit that with anything, right?
clout.
It's a form of faith, right? Like it's like does anyone have like these people will be like, "Well, you have like I don't trust you at all." Like, you know what I mean? Like they're like, "I'm not going to engage in good faith because I don't credit you anything. I have
Yeah.
no confidence in your judgment." You know?
Yeah, and that's like the sort of point of brand building, right? Like to sort
Yeah,
of
it's to build confidence.
to have
That's
people
what
that
it is.
trust you, and
Yeah.
really you're basically setting them up, like you're setting them up to be lied to, right? Like that's
Potentially, yeah. But almost absolutely, yeah. Like in some ways, absolutely, yeah. You know, like that's ultimately going to happen.
yeah, like there's some sell at the end, like you're you feel like you're part of this, maybe like fandom or something like that.
How much of it is like really a lie or a sell? If you're like what I try to do is I just try to be as open and honest about like how the processes that these work in the first place. So I'll say something like, I'm a grifter. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, so like I'm grifting. Like, yeah, I like live off of tips. Like, send me money because for this, if you feel like it, like that's it. It's you could say that, but like the confidence man who tells you he's a confidence man, perhaps that is the greatest confidence scheme of all. Like you can never be absolutely certain. It all comes down to an issue of faith at a certain point. There's no way to rigorously prove any of this.
Well, the reason why I come to your spaces, and I've listened to a handful of them at this point, and the reason why I feel good about talking to you is that like you just put everything on the table to start. Like you tell everybody what you're about, and you don't really seem like you're trying to hide anything at all. It seems like
I'm not.
most
I
people.
used to try to hide things more out of a sense of like self-preservation. I like didn't want people to know my real name. I didn't want people. You know what I mean? Like I didn't want people to like have pictures of my face or whatever, so they could fucking
Well,
manipulate it and
that's
do a bunch of
reasonable.
psychotic shit. But they do it now anyway, so it's like I got
Yeah,
nothing to lose.
I know that people have like stalked you and stuff, and I wouldn't fault anybody for like trying to prevent that kind of thing. But as far as like,
I don't know. I kind of at this point, like I don't fault people for it because I don't think there's anything wrong with like I understand I've been in that position, but like if you're really, really devoted to doing it, you're gonna end up giving all of yourself. You're gonna have to be honest about all of it, because everything is revealed. Like it doesn't matter. Like even if I would have preferred to have like never had my face revealed and been doxxed and then had my name and like what school I went to, et cetera, all this information about me out there. It's all going to be out there anyway. It's out there in eternity. God already knows all of it.
yeah,
That's why I think it's like a part of it is like people's fears of God's judgment as mediated through the judgment of others. Right. But if you're only concerned with like God's judgment, then the judgment of others is really irrelevant. Like if you're already comfortable with yourself under God's judgment, then what do you have to fear from the judgment of the people, right? Like Christ was comfortable with himself under God's judgment, even though he was branded a heretic. He was said he was possessed by demons. He was crucified, but he knew that he was in the right. Like he was right with God, which is how he had the strength and the confidence in himself even to do what he was doing.
yeah, and like that's the kind of thing that I think scares people a lot is like really
People lack
reckoning.
confidence. They have to lack confidence in themselves a lot of the time. They've been trained to lack confidence in themselves. They've been trained to doubt themselves, to always be skeptical of themselves.
Yeah, and to put confidence somewhere else.
Yeah,
like
put
really
confidence
anywhere else.
in the experts, you could say. Put confidence in the experts, in the consensus of the experts. So kind of you could say that's like that's like the same thing effectively that the Church of the Antichrist has done, right? Where it's like, well, you just have to have confidence in these conclaves. You have to have confidence in the bureaucratic goings on of this institution. You can't have
Right.
confidence in the text even, right? They introduce all these like, well, you can't have absolute confidence in just your ability to understand what this text means.
And I think right now we're sort of in like the primacy of one consumer demographic as far as like who the experts are goes, and like the sort of political struggles.
It's the service sector. The majority of our economy amongst people who are citizens and not stripped of their citizenship or in quasi-legal categories of pseudo-citizenship, like being a felon or something. The media is appealing to service workers because the media is produced by service workers for service workers, right? Because the media is a service. So that's obviously the class interest it's going to reflect. It's going to reflect that. So it's like, for instance, you could talk about there's citizen journalists, right? There's independent journalists, citizen journalists who, they're like, I work, I do these other things, but I'm also doing this. Like I can also speak. I can also enter the discourse. They're the ones who are being chased out by the professional service workers in the media by creating political correctness, like i.e. a style guide for speech in the media. So it says if you do not follow like our consensus here as to the style in which the discourse shall go about amongst our class of service workers, then you are dangerous and you are not accredited and you need to be removed from here because we don't want your competition.
You could even say that like Marvel movies are made for baristas and not truckers,
They
basically,
literally
right?
are. Yeah, pretty much. And that's kind of how it lines up. You don't see like those guys aren't like waving Marvel stuff, but it's kind of, you know what I mean? Like that's not what the
Yeah.
fandom is. The
And
fandom
then
is what is the fandom?
if you were to try to make like the Marvel movie for truckers or something like that, like you would be probably attacked. Like that's not
Of course.
allowed.
Of course. It would be very dangerous to do so. It'd be very difficult to get the funding to do so. It would be very difficult to do it at all. Like, look at like someone like Mel Gibson or whatever, where he's not making movies for his own class. Like he hates his own class. He
Yeah.
absolutely hates his own class. He's trying to make movies for like his like he still remembers his upbringing, right? From in a proletarian family, and he's like trying to represent those people, even at a massive cost to himself. So there are people within that who try to do that. For instance, Kanye West, right? Kanye West pays a massive cost for his attempt to speak on behalf of the people, like in Pablo, right, where he's like, "I'm one with the people." You know what I mean? Like he is putting himself out there to be crucified and to suffer on their behalf. And who's suffering? Who's punishing him? Who hates him the most? It's this class. It's this class of service. It's his own class. He's literally a
Yeah.
class enemy.
It's journalists and entertainers and the people who like honestly depend on him more than they realize. I guess it's like the same thing with like how the news media like really depended on Trump for like a constant cycle of things to talk about and stuff.
Yeah,
But
their ratings have gone down. Like they're struggling now.
like they need to talk about Kanye because like they're incapable of producing
Well,
anything
they just
themselves.
make the new one. Trump just took up the spotlight of that for a long time, but they'll talk about Kanye in the same exact way, or they'll talk about and they talk about all the same things in the same exact way. Like that's they're trying to create these lines, right? Like we're socially producing these class positions, this class war is mediated through all levels of society and all things. The class war exists.
Yeah, man, it totally does. All right, I got to get back to work, but great talking to you.
Well, thanks for coming on, man.
Maybe next time I'll actually debate you on something. I know
Okay.
you've been asking for
Sorry.
people to
I
do that.
know it's kind of funny to me because I'm always like looking. I just think it's more educative or whatever, like just to show like what these people actually sound like in real life when they're not just, when they're not just like behind a screen, just like sarcastically quipping or whatever, because they present themselves as being generally like these calm, collected, like above it all, cool people who are just like, like, huh, as if I care, like this is so obviously stupid. It wouldn't bother me and get me ridiculously upset. I wouldn't start just screaming obscenities at someone if they disagree with me because I'm cool and collected, etc. But then, if you actually talk to them and you try to demonstrate good faith in an attempt to like come to some higher understanding, they will fucking treat you like shit, and everyone else can see that. So you're like, oh, okay, they literally do act like this, right? In real life, like it's not just online that they act like this. You can ask anyone also who's met me in real life and sees me online that I'm literally like this all the time. Like I'm like this offline. This is just me. I'm like this literally all the time.
I totally
My
believe
dad
you.
just
Yeah.
walked by, and I was like, I did a pretty funny space the other day. You should listen to it when I was arguing with this guy. And he's like, I don't need to listen to it. I hear you all the fucking time. Like I'm just like, you know what I mean? Like this is who I am.
Oh my God, man. The one like I guess it was like last week or something where that guy was like, yeah, like I definitely think like the Azov battalion is bad and stuff like that. But then when you ask him like, all right, well, like, will you ally with like the actual proletariat or are you gonna ally with like social fascists? And he's like, oh, I guess I'm gonna ally with social fascists at the end of the day.
Yeah. And like,
I was
hopefully
like,
that.
why?
But the thing is, I think also it's like a public service to get these people to like state truths that they acknowledge about themselves, but to state them like unambiguously, because it has an effect on their consciousness, like it has an effect on their souls, right? Like for
Right.
instance, like I was talking to that guy who was the sangria socialist who works at a call center. I'm like, well, like repeat after me, like I do not produce surplus value. Like when I go to work, I don't produce surplus value. I circulate capital. And he's like, well, yeah, that's true, but I won't say it. And he's like, you make money on Patreon, and I'm like, yes, I make money on Patreon. It's not difficult for me to speak a truth about myself. You know what I mean? Like that's what I do. I just try to speak the truth about myself. I have no problem with revealing, all these sorts of things. Or like, someone else was accusing me that I claim to know everything. I'm like, I don't know everything. God knows everything. That's not what I'm saying. I have no problem saying like I don't know everything. People are like, oh, you're so prideful. I'm like, yeah, I struggle with pride. Everyone struggles with pride, right? Like that's one of the things. Like I'm a sinner. I'm not a saint.
Like, I'm not pretending to be a saint. I'm a sinner just like everyone else. I struggle with all these things. I'm not presenting myself in the way that they take me to be presenting myself. So I have no issues, like, revealing that that's the case. But they might have issues with the same. I'd be like, well, you're prideful too, right? And they're like, oh, no. That guy, for instance, the Sangria socialist, he called me a narcissist. I'm like, well, are you a narcissist? You know, are you guilty of the same thing, or is this just solely me? You're not a narcissist, but I am. What differentiates us? I mean, I think, everyone's a narcissist to some degree. It's about whether or not that's like pathological or not. It's like about whether or not, and if you can tell if it's pathological by whether or not someone can admit to it. Because the most
Yeah.
narcissistic person is the person who's like, I am not a narcissist. I am always like concerned with others. I'm such a good person. I'm always concerned. I never have any temptations towards my own self-interest. I only ever think about other people, etc. Those are the most narcissistic people in the world.
And it causes them pain to like really acknowledge it.
Yeah, they can't. They cause. Well, it is pain. It is pain. Like Dante in the Purgatorio, right? Like it's inverted. So the worst sin is pride, but the first sin you have to overcome on your road to paradise here is pride, and it's what it is carrying an idol of yourself on your back, right? You have to carry this idol of yourself, weight up of all of your seeming goods. This way, all of the ways that you're seeming good to yourself. You're like, oh, look at me, aren't I so good? And that is what you have to carry. And then when you lift that weight, when that weight is off of your shoulders, that's the beginning of freedom.
Yeah. All right. Before I go, I'll just say that it's a crime that they only they teach high schoolers the Inferno and then they just stop there.
They do it on purpose. Right?
They do it on purpose. They really do. They really do.
Because like if you actually read that whole book and it does not change your fucking soul, if it does not change your soul, if it does not like radically alter you, if you do not like cry while reading that book, it's not something that you can just like go read a Wikipedia article about. It's like a real experience. It's like the same thing with like the Bible, right? Like you can like go read the Wikipedia page of the Bible and have go to like the various stances people have on it. You'd be like, I'm just gonna pick that one because it seems like the one that I would agree with in my current position of not actually having engaged with the thing itself. I'm going to pick that one out of all the panoply of options here, the way that you might pick something at a grocery store. But that's not a real experience of it, like you have to actually read the text. It will change you. It changes you. The Bible knows you better than you know yourself. It will alter you by reading it. Like this contact with these things, with like revelatory literature, prophetic literature, any of this stuff, it actually has a real effect on your life. That's how you know it's good. It's like undeniable because it radically alters you. You can no longer think the same way that you thought prior to having engaged with these things. That's why those things, those works of art, are kind of objectively part of like what we might call the canon, or it's like how they became part of the scripture in the first place, is that they just had this undeniable effect on people's consciousnesses in a way that other things did not. Because not everything has that effect on you. I read a ton of shit that goes in one ear and out the other, goes into my mind and out. It doesn't stick with me. It hasn't changed me in any way. But the things that have changed me, the things that have really affected me, that have really altered the way that I think about things, the way that have altered like how I try to live in the world, those are the greatest works of art. Like I can't think of anything else. Anyway, it's been nice talking to you, man.
Yeah, take care.
See if I got anyone else. Anyone else want to come on? Or I can now read the thing. We'll see. I'll give it a sec for requests. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. His truth is marching on. All right. What's up, Cash? You're always coming on. What's up, Cash?
What's up, Logo? I had a question.
What up, Cash?
Like,
Yeah,
I
what's up?
noticed it's like about these pagans. Like, why are so many people like consumed by being a pagan, and then why do they not see that? Like, even though I don't know much about paganism, I can see like there's a difference between like going to some remote
Because they
tribe
hate
and
Christianity.
seeing that's why.
They
Why-
hate Christianity. The thing is that like they hate Christianity. I can explain why. Like, there's a lot of reasons why they might have come to hate Christianity. It's because hating Christianity seems good to them, right? It's a seeming good. Like, and then why does it seem good to them? Because they've taken in a lot of the people who say that, like, hey, Christianity is bad, Christianity is reactionary, Christianity is patriarchal and oppressive and evil, and Christianity is the origin of all of these problems in America. Or, as this one, like, the Protestant work ethic is the reason for capitalism and exploitation. So all of these things are like, oh, Christianity is just a lie that priests tell you in order to extract your capital, et cetera, et cetera. That's all that it is. And so they have a delimited conception of Christianity. They don't really, instead of learning about Christianity, they learn why they shouldn't. All right, I gotta mute you for a sec just because the noise is a lot. But they learn this through cultural production, and this happened a lot in the 20th century because a lot of Christians were, following the Antichrist. They were, manipulated by capitalists, right? They're manipulated by capitalists into voting against their interests, right? Like Mark Twain was talking about the same thing in 1903, right? He's saying, like, how are all these Christians voting for criminals? How are they contributing to this criminality in society? Like, how are they, like, doing this? Like, how are they supporting this empire? Like, and it's because they're convinced by these seeming goods. And so then there's people who are like, well, I can see that, right? We've lived through that era. We remember the Bush era when a lot of Christians were convinced that it was good. It seemed good to, like, take vengeance, right, upon Muslims and in the Middle East, etc. That seemed good to them, right? They were called to a crusade by the Antichrist, by these people who are clearly not really authentic Christians. Someone like George W. Bush, Dick Cheney, all the neocons. These people were like, oh yeah, we're Christians, whatever, fucking rubes. They're literally cynically manipulating these people and lying to them. And, like, those people gave them their confidence. They gave them their faith. Maybe they should not have. Maybe that was a mistake. Maybe they should not have had confidence in these people, and that they should have had confidence in Christ's ministry and compared that to that, right? They should have had confidence in Christ and not in the political media. They should have had confidence in Christ and not in the GOP. They should have had confidence in Christ and not in Fox News.
Oh, okay, so I understand, and honestly, it seems like nowadays, like, ever since like the Black Panthers is gone, there seems to be a lot of, like, I don't know what to call it, spiritual woo, just a bunch of bullshit that's like in Black political
It's like
leaders.
New Ageism.
Yeah, New Age. There's a
New
bunch of
Ageism,
New
New
Age
leftism.
bullshit. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's like
Yeah,
spreading
that's a big part of
everywhere.
the psychological manipulation. Well, the thing is that represents the class interests of the creditor class, right? Like, who's going to these retreats? Like, who's going to these, like, little climate retreats, into their, like, enlightened meditation sessions, et cetera, et cetera. And they're like, oh yeah, this is how you save your particular soul. Is you realize that life is all suffering, and that to die is better than to live. That the absence of suffering is what the good is. That good is the absence of something and not the presence of something real. The good is just the absence of suffering and that nothing more, as opposed to what we say, but the good is the absolute real thing. And the only thing that is evil is the absence of the good, right? So this is what they are taught. This is what they're trained to think, because that's the class consciousness that is necessary in order to justify the actions that they need to partake in. It justifies their actions to themselves, which is why they have that philosophy in any way. That's like what a philosophy is. It's how you justify yourself before God, like, ultimately. Or that's what a religion is, a faith is. That's what all of this is. It's how are you justifying yourself in the last judgment, you could say, right? Man, Christian terminology to me is just, it rolls off the tongue. It's so much easier than when everyone's talking about fucking Marxist terminology and all this other shit. Because I think the Christian terminology is just like, gets cut straight to the marrow, where it's like, what are you in the last judgment? Where do you side in the last judgment? That's way harder to answer. That's way more concerning than, like, what is your opinion on, like, the commodity form or something like that. Like, that's kind of trivial in comparison.
Yeah, and it's like it's disturbing, like, seeing all this New Age stuff, because, like, as a Black person, I see, like, all my peers just, like, either just falling into the divisive bullshit, or I see people going the complete opposite direction and getting led by false prophets, just in some form.
Yeah.
And yeah, they did a number on us, like, pretty bad, and they're trying to,
That
like,
was part
spread
of the
that to the
thing,
rest
right?
of the
The
country.
thing is that what people forget is that the civil rights movement was all Christians. Like, it was Christianity that was what made that possible. That's what the power of it came from. Like, Martin Luther King was a pastor, like, these people were like, the I Have a Dream speech was written by a theologian, like a Black theologian who was a devout Christian and a pastor, etc. That is that is the origin here. That's the real thing in the class struggle in America in particular, in our particular circumstances, because we don't have a state church. You could say if we have a state church, it's the experts, the credentialed authorities. What the NRX people called it the cathedral. What they really mean is the media. What they really mean there is the interest of creditors.
Yeah, and like, how do we fight against this? Because I've been on my infrared thing, like I've just been seeing Hodge's ideas and stuff. I'm like, yeah, this
You
shit
have to
makes a lot
provide a
of sense.
better
So I'm trying to
example.
translate it.
You have to provide a better example. That's it. That's what we're doing all the time. Like, you have to stand by these principles, this conception of the good, and you have to stand by it at all times. You have to, work all the time at it, and that's what we're called to do.
All right, thanks, Olga. Yeah, that's all my questions answered.
All right, man. Thanks for coming on. I got another person here. I don't think I've talked to you before, Silent Hill. Maybe I have. Maybe I haven't. What's up, Silent Hill?
Hello, and good morning from Chicago.
Good morning, man.
Hey, so I'm not here to debate or anything. It's really just a quick comment and some gratitude. So I just want to say thank you for the recommendation of The Great Code, the Bible and Literature by Northrop Frye. It was really illuminating, especially since I don't think I had actually come across anyone talk of the Bible in such a way or describe how it, if you will, flows.
Yeah.
And it even seems more, I guess, reasonable or natural, if that makes sense, compared to a lot of what I've heard from just like people, just out and about. Not only that, but just kind of to your last point, as far as like talking to people about just kind of the world we live in, I have found that through my own kind of journey of political knowledge that trying to talk about, say, oh, how the economy works or what's happening over here, over there, and such, if you will, archaic terms, people's eyes tend to glaze over. But
oh yeah, they've been trained to do that too. Like, they've had the curiosity beaten out of them.
Right. But like with my really good friend's mother, I would kind of reading through that book and kind of listening to what's been happening online, I instead, based on my little bit of knowledge of, I guess, the Bible itself, spoke more in, I guess, Christian terms. And then she picked up on all that right away. And then what she described ultimately was the exact same thing that, as far as like how the economy works, who's in power. She essentially described it all as, say, Marx or Michael Hudson would, but in Christian terms.
Yeah.
So it's really fascinating in that sense.
Well, that's what I was talking to my dad about this, and I was like, the thing that people don't realize about the Bible is that it's a political economics textbook. Like that's what they don't realize about it. That like Jesus was a political economist. That like this actually it's an anatomy of being. It's an anatomy of life in this world. That's what it is. Like, you could say the Bible in some ways is like a satire, in the sense that a satire contains all of the different genres. And what it's trying to do is to juxtapose appearance with reality, so as to, like, dialectically, so as to reveal the absolute truth, and not just like the seeming truth, or just a mere description of things, but to juxtapose those two things. That's why the Bible is like replete with irony and paradox, which are the tools of like satire as well. It's an anatomy. So yeah, that's like why, and that's why this terminology is like, so it's like it's imbued into us. Like, it's in our language. Like, that's why I always recommend the King James translation, particularly because that translation was so influential. The poetry in it, the phrases in it are used in common parlance all the time. And it's like, so it's part of the English language tradition. Like, if you use the English language, your language was built by this like translation project and all these other productions, right? Like, and that's our real commons. Like, I would say communism ultimately is the replacement of the rule by force with the rule by language.
Mm-hmm.
Language has authority. Like, that's what the word of God means. Like, the word of God has absolute authority. Language.
Right. And the only other thing I really have to say is that as someone who, since like 14 was, I guess you could say, an atheist, but without really knowing what that was or is, if you will, I'm starting to feel myself, after reading The Great Code, I kind of want to read it again, but I definitely feel myself being pulled more towards finishing the Bible. I was reading through a version of the King James version, but a friend's uncle, he was recommending the 1611 version years
Oh
ago.
yeah.
So I ended up picking that up, and I'm going to start through it. But now this is actually a question for you. So obviously no one talks like that quite much anymore. So any recommendations or kind of, I guess, where to go to like better question. I saw that you posted like the text from the King James version, and then underneath it was the text in Greek, and then kind of like the etymology, I believe. I think it's a particular website you might have went to.
Oh, there's like if you look up any verse of the Bible, it's like the first result, but like Bible Hub, I believe it's called. You can see like all myriad translations of every single verse. It will show you myriad commentaries on every single verse. You can do comparison side by side readings of the text in Hebrew and in Greek on every single verse. It's a really great resource. I use it all the time because sometimes like reading the Bible can be confusing. It's been confusing to people forever. It's like it's because it's like such a powerful work, and it's like so complicated. It's like it's the most like meta literary thing ever written. Like if you were to imagine this book as to be produced by like one person, that person would have to have been the greatest fucking genius of all time, because the way that it all reflect like the same metaphors, etc. The way Fry talks about the structure of it,
Right.
like it's the way that it is like a novel in a way, like it makes the existence of the novel possible, you could say, because of this of the way that it works. Like it's a meta literary commentary on itself, and then there's been infinite commentaries on it afterwards. It's truly the most magnificent work of literature, and really that's how I was brought to it. Like I was brought to it as just a lover of poetry and literature, and it took me a long time to get to the point where I'd like actually read the entire Bible. Like I've read parts of it, etc. But like I just kept coming back to it because that was where all literature was pointing me. Everything I read pointed me back to there. So eventually, you just have like if you're going to be serious about it and you really value poetry and literature and wisdom, like you're going to get there. That's what Johnny Cash told Bob Dylan. Actually, I like this little anecdote because Johnny Cash said that Bob Dylan was a man who was after the truth, and you will always end up with Christ if that's your mission. If all you care about is the truth, if all you care about is wisdom and truth in this world and in life, in eternity, etc., if that's what you're motivated by and that's what you're seeking, you will find it. It says that in the Bible as well, right? So,
right. So after that, all I have to say is again, thank you. Keep doing what you're doing, and of course, take care.
Thanks, man. All right, I got what's your name here? Blythe Satirist. I've got a Blythe Satirist here. What's up?
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you. What's up, man?
Oh my goodness. All right. I had been intending to talk to you, I think, yesterday a little bit.
Yeah, my phone died, and I was just like, I'm done.
No,
so I figured
totally.
I'd do a continuity here.
Look, I've been trying to up the energy a little bit. I really want to get talking about the problem with these Marxist theorists who are always, quote tweeting you and getting real in your face. But at the end of the day, when you are hosting these spaces, who are you encountering? You're encountering maybe like four different people who are talking to you. There's like Seth, the restaurateur. There's that one guy at the beginning of your thing yesterday.
The Sangria Socialist, of course.
Yeah, the Sangria. So like, what's the point? Like, these people won't even try to engage with you. So at first I was a little bit on board with this whole, stealing communism as like a language and as the like other half.
Well, I could tell you the point that it would have in a larger audience, because obviously we're talking mostly in like their conditions, and they don't actually want to talk to me in this way. They just want to sit back and like have a little. Someone's having a normal one, like that's all they want to do. Like they don't want to engage with anything in this level. But the point would be that we're showing like our ability to stand firm and to like show that we have like the truth on our side against these people. That's how we get the people on our side, right? So if we're going, so like, let's say we built up a party of people arguing with the same types of arguments I'm using, et cetera. We had a larger platform to do this, and we were arguing and challenging more of these like authorities, et cetera. The same thing would happen. the same thing would happen. And it like I'm like, this is the reason why Trump gained so much confidence, right? Because he was put on the stage with all of these Republicans, all of these fucking neocons, etc. And he fucking destroyed them. He just blew them all out. He blew the fuck out. That's what we want to do to all of them. So like, that's what it is. I'm not saying Trump is like a representation of the absolute good, but I'm saying his tactics, his means of building confidence in the people was absolutely on point.
Adopting his tactics is definitely something we want to do, and it's also, I mean, MAGA communism, frankly, it seems to be the only way that MAGA.
It's what Engels said to do. It's literally the end. This is what I've been saying this since the beginning. Think about when Trump back in the day, when he was like, the Republican Party will become a workers' party. You know what I mean? And it's like damn, that's cold. You know what I mean? Like, that's sick. Like, that is powerful. Like, that is the type, like, it is, like, he even recognized, at least to some, as much as he was capable of recognizing what the interests of the people were and, like, what the good is. I don't think Donald Trump is, like, a good Christian or something, or that, you know what I mean? Like,
No,
he's
not at
obviously,
all.
like, a landlord and a creditor, and he's grifting and, like, manipulating these people in a cynical fashion just as much. But the power that he tapped into was something beyond him. He started to be afraid of his own movement at a certain point.
Yeah. Frankly, I guess to get like a real question down, what I would maybe think of, maybe instead of like just adopting like straight up communism, is getting the tent of the working class larger before moving on to something like that. And to do
No, I
that,
don't think so.
oh no, you don't.
No. I don't think we should
MAGA's
lie.
enough?
No, I don't. Yeah, because I don't think we like. Okay, so what does Engels say that like the duty of communists in America should be? It should be make an alliance with the Land Reform Party, the National Agrarian, the National Reform, the like farmers, etc. of America. Like, that is going to be our real base. Are the farmers of America, right? Because they're being taken out by Bill Gates and these fucking capital equity firms, etc., who are buying up all the farmland after the banks are foreclosing on them, right? And that is like our base. That is our base. That is who we want to make common cause with. We want to make common cause with the like yeoman farmers, the smallholders, etc. Elements of the petty bourgeois, even like in these libertarians, like Ron Paul Maoism is something I've said. This is something Engels says that we should do. And he says that we should uphold constitutional liberties, the Constitution, the rights of Americans, above and beyond any other party that's around. We are going to take the Constitution for the proletariat, you see, and that is what is going to inspire people. That's what's going to bring people to us, is we're saying we defend free speech. We are the best defenders of free speech. We defend the Second Amendment. We are the defenders of constitutional liberties against the attackers, the people who are betraying the cause, our common heritage, our common inheritance, which is our rights as Americans.
I mean, like I am like super on board with like all of that stuff personally, for sure. I would say that like my concern about adopting this rather instead of something else more like stealing the ideas of like progressivism.
We're not
and
stealing it.
tying it in.
Progressivism has a horrific history that we need not want. Progressives were the betrayers of America. Progressives destroyed our constitutional liberties. Progressives were eugenicists and elitists. They were not populists. They did not believe in the people. The progressives believed progress is a euphemism for social Darwinism as providence. Progress is when people that are reactionary no longer are born, right? The people, that is what this cosmos is. I hate progressives. Fuck progressivism. I am against progress, as this is called.
Yeah.
We take communism because these people are enemies here. The social democrats and all these leftoids, they don't call themselves communists anymore. And if you really press them, we're like, we're Marxist, Leninist, Maoist. Like, we agree with like, we are communists in the way that Xi Jinping is a communist, right? They will say, well, then I'm not a communist. So we say, good, you never were. We were always the communists. The MAGA people were always the closest to communism. You never were even close. That's a revelation of the truth. We should not abandon these terms. We're not stealing them either. They're rightfully ours.
So eventually, at some point, the people who are just sort of getting whipped up, the working class that gets stuck voting Democrat.
Are they working class, though?
Uh,
What working class demographics are voting Democrats? I mean, they get
a lot.
manipulated in the same way, but
Yeah,
aren't they mostly a
manipulated.
service sector? Aren't they mostly a service sector party? Aren't they like the CIA party now?
That's definitely what they're doing right now. And if they
This has been a
continue
massive
doing
change
that, they're
since
gonna
2008.
start losing. They're gonna start losing more of the people that I'm talking
They already
about.
have. That's what MAGA was. That's what it represents. It's already happening. It's already real. That's already real. That's what's happening. That's what, when people are saying there's like a shift in politics or whatever, a shift amongst the parties, et cetera, what's happening is that working class people are seeing more and more every day that the Democrats do not represent their interests, that the Democrats are the actual like fascists and reactionaries in power, that the Democrats are so far from communism that they're in active war against it, that the Democrats do not produce prosperity, that the Democrats want to fucking mutilate their children, that the Democrats want to destroy everything that they hold valuable. The working class people are seeing this every day, which is why there's so much anxiety about what they call right-wing radicalization, which just means people saying the Democrats are bad. That's it.
Yeah.
If you look at the polling, but if you want to talk about polls, et cetera, the Democrats have a ton of common cause and good feeling towards institutions like the CIA that do not exist amongst the Republican base and independents.
Not
We want to
anymore,
go for
no.
independents and Republicans, and we want to get the Democrats who are skeptical away from the Democrats. That is our base. We do not need the partisan Democrats for life who are just loyal to the Democrats, have absolute faith in the Democratic Party, and confidence in their ability to rule. Those people are our enemies.
Yeah, I'm not really talking about like common cause Democrats that'll just sort of vote down ballot.
I mean, Bernie
blue.
Sanders supporters. If Bernie Sanders supporters who would not disavow Bernie Sanders as a reactionary, then they're worthless to us.
Yeah, I'm. Tell you what, like I work at a factory, and some people just voted for Joe Biden straight up because they just got scared. They got cold feet.
They did. They did. Someone admitted this to me the other day. They said like that they regret it, that they feel bad about it, that they were able to be cajoled and abused and threatened into doing this, which is what happened.
Yeah, that's exactly what was going on, and that's the feelings right now. While people are buying.
So we want to represent
butter.
Strength against that. We want to show people that they can be courageous, that they can stand by their principles, that they can say no to this, that they don't have to be pushed and forced and bullied by the Democrats into like conforming to whatever they demand ex cathedra.
Okay, so because I'm starting to get to talk about like usury and whatnot with some of my coworkers and particularly the Christians, and that's sort of what I'm going for. But eventually, at some point, as I'm doing this, I'm gonna come across the Sangria Socialist. I'm gonna come across this guy, and I have in life before. Without really the necessary tools to address these sorts of things.
And that's why I do it. I do it because I'm trying to show you the tools. I'm trying to give you the tools so that you can stand up to these people the way that I do. Because I'm not going to be bullied by these people. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to let them win. They'll never win. I'm always going to be here. I'm an unmovable object.
Yeah, for sure. And that's why I like these spaces so much. They come really fast, and when I see them, I jump right in. Thanks so much for them. It's really great agitprop is what it is.
That's what it is. I'm preaching.
But I
I'm trying to stir people up.
Yeah, I wish they just just come on here and like even the guy yesterday, like ultimately.
Well, they're cowards. They're the real cowards.
Ultimately, he was just like screaming at you and wasn't really talking or anything. But
he did try to make some points, but all he does is reveal the baseness and the vulgarity and the hatred in his heart. That's all he's done,
I just kind of wish they would come out a little bit more. We could like fish hook them in, but
I mean that's your job. Go get some for me.
Yeah, maybe I got to unlock my account and start pulling some people
or
in.
whoever is listening. I guess when I say you in that sense, but yeah, I mean I'm here for them. I'll take them on. Like I'm a service for you. If you don't feel like you can do it, or you don't want to be bullied by these people, you don't want to stand up to it, like I will. Like I'm Batman, like I'm doing it.
Yeah, all
I
right.
want to strike fear in these lumpins, man. These jokers.
It's great. Yeah. Yeah. I tell you, I went to an acting school for a while, and these people, they can't change. Some of them.
They
I
can.
mean,
You just have. Maybe some of them refuse to, but they can. They have the possibility.
they have
potentiality
the
to do it.
choice. They have the choice, but it's hard to see.
You can't save everyone is the other thing. That's something that was difficult for me to swallow, right? Is that like, like hell is not created by God, right? Men create like this hell, like, Lucifer, Satan, pride creates hell. Like God didn't create hell. Hell is created by the devil, right? And people choose to go there. They choose to go to hell. They want to be there. They follow their perverted desires, etc., their seeming goodliness to hell. And you can say this is the path to hell, right? Dante says, abandon all hope, ye who enter here. Who chooses to enter there? People choose. They walk and they make that choice volitionally. But sometimes they don't know that's the choice they're making. But if you can make it clear to them that that's the choice that they're making, they might still make that choice. I think Elon Musk actually tweeted. Someone was like, I don't remember what the exact quote was, but he said I'm going to be going to hell because that's where the majority of people are going. So that's fine because I'm following just like the consensus. He actually tweeted that.
It's crazy.
So it's
that
like,
guy.
what do you do with that?
You just have to like not.
It's defeat. It's like Mark Twain called this a walking sarcasm. Being like kind of pridefully in a way of trying to seeming good, of virtue signaling, being like, yeah, I'm gonna go to hell because like Christians are so bigoted and backwards that everyone's gonna be going to hell. So I'm just like everyone else. And in a way, that's almost like it's close. It's actually close. It's actually close in approximating the sense of like the fallenness of man, where it's like actually, yeah, like maybe we do deserve to go to hell. Maybe I deserve to go to hell. Maybe in the last judgment, I'll be sent to hell. Maybe I'm a sinner. That's kind of almost humility. But to present it the way that he had, he's transformed that potential humility, the potential revelation, into a source of pride for himself.
Oh, geez. Yeah, that guy needs to like not be a voice for people at all.
He needs to go where he needs to build the land bridge. He hasn't ever done any real productive labor in his whole life. Like he's just a financialist. He's just a financialist. He has money and he has investments and he's a manager of other people who do real work. He hasn't invented anything. He hasn't produced anything himself.
He can be the pipe fitter for the pneumatic tube that sends us to Mars.
Yeah, exactly. That he should at least have to do that. He should at least have to do that. He should spend. He should have
honestly
work a shift building the cars. Building Teslas. Like we should see if he wanted to do real public relations and actually wanted beyond just seeming good, he would work.
No, yeah, and I mean this talk about the difference between like service labor and like actual proletarian labor, this stuff hits people like me like really hard. Like that gets people like me riled up because it's not talked about and it's extremely true.
Well, the thing is that all these people know that.
Here's one difference that
you already knew that.
Yeah, I did. I kind of did already know that. I just wasn't able to quite delineate the difference. But as I was thinking about it, here's one more difference. If I like walk into a McDonald's and I steal from like the soda fountain, well, like all right, the retail worker might like ask me to stop, but I'm just gonna like leave or whatever. I'm gonna steal a bunch of ketchup packets. If someone breaks into a factory and like halts production, that's industrial sabotage. You get arrested for that, just for being there.
Yeah.
And that's why people like this Extinction Rebellion or whatever, like they're not going to go risk themselves, getting some like serious time doing anything except for like going into a supermarket and spilling milk.
Yeah. And guess who has to clean that up? It's not the cashiers. It's the fucking janitors. It's the proletarian element of their labor pool. They're punishing proletarians. That's what they do. They go in and they just like punish proletarians. And they're like, this is our activism. And it's like, yeah, that is your activism. Your activism is just the punishment and the shaming and the bullying of proletarians.
Yeah. I mean, that's just a difference that I've thought of that I don't think was addressed yet. And if anyone disagrees,
I was thinking, I was thinking yesterday, someone was like, in 2020, right? There was a guy who was just loitering, just hanging out outside of a Wendy's. And some service worker called, probably because their manager told them, like, oh, this person, I don't know, this person bought anything? What are they doing here? Just like ask them to leave, etc. And the cops came and just fucking killed him.
What the fuck?
It's like, So it's like, yeah, that happens. That happens.
All right. I don't want to lower the energy any further.
All right,
So,
man. Well, thanks for coming on. I'm gonna see if there's anyone else in the queue. I've just been like walking back and forth with like my arms behind my back. You know, I'm like pacing. But
oh God,
all right,
I'm
cool.
doing the same exact thing. So yeah.
Yeah. All right. See you, man. All right. I've got Adrian Remy Ballo. Okay, you're a Lincoln Republican, Bolshevist, industrial unionist, so we probably already agree on most things. So what's up, man? What's your goal here? You got a question?
Yeah, what's up, man? I'm from Buffalo, New York. We do agree on a lot of stuff. I
Hell
love
yeah.
your fucking content and shit, but I'm turning a new leaf in my life. I've been a heathen my entire life. I went through a bout with heroin, and I'm really just trying to start, like, kick off like a religious aspect of my life. I have no clue where to start. It was never introduced to me.
Okay, page 1 of the Bible, and then what you do is when you're done with page 1, you turn the
Page
page,
2 of
you
the
read
Bible.
page 2. And then when you're done with page 2, what you do is you turn the page again and you read
Page,
page 3.
okay.
And then if you iterate that process, you'll get to the end of
Right.
the Bible. And then when you do that, what you do is you go back to page 1 and you read page
Right.
1, and then you read
Right,
page
right,
2.
right.
And if you do that, if you read the Bible all the way through once, it'll change your life. If you read it all the way through twice, it'll change your life.
All right, man.
Even
I'll
more.
fucking do that. I plan on going to church with my grandpa on Sundays now. So if you're,
They don't read the Bible there though very much. You know, if you just want to like get to the text, you know, you can just read.
that's
You know,
very
it's
true.
all it's available
The church
everywhere.
with my grandpa thing is mostly just to be with my grandpa, just because I like him and shit.
Yeah.
But yeah. So that was my only question. Sorry for not being high energy or shit.
Oh no, like I'm not being ironic at all, like in the slightest. Like I really think that this is like a life-changing process to actually engage with that text in a like really serious and a holistic manner, like reading the entire thing. Because when you read the entire thing, you actually see everything that led up to Christ, right? Like a lot of people just be like, oh, just read the New Testament. You can skip all the old, like none of that really matters. But that's like taking away all of the gravity of it,
Right.
like all of the necessity of it. Like all of like that, everything that it's been building towards.
Yeah, the context.
The whole time.
Absolutely. Okay, actually,
Yeah.
I have some stuff that we might have some conflicting stuff, not on the religious aspect, but I've been doing some thinking about like the vacuum issues that culminated, like the pre-2016 vacuum issues that culminated in MAGA. How many of these things are organic, real American beliefs, and how many of them are actually generated by like mainstream media? Like to me, I view like. I don't know, like
Most normal people are actually far closer to our positions here than they would let on, or even if polled and things, because they're like cajoled and bullied into their attempts of seeming good, right? Like because they want to go along to get along, right? But like for instance, you know, I talk to normal people about all the like trans rights issues, et cetera, et cetera. They would have what would be called an extremely reactionary position on these things.
yeah.
But they would never reveal this if they were polled for the most part, right? Or if they were asked in like a professional circumstance, they might not reveal. They might state a position and a preference, which is actually completely opposed to what they actually truly believe if they're speaking to you, as we say, in confidence.
Yeah, definitely. Sometimes it's just you know, you get one or two of them that's like, yeah, the fucking Earth is flat, man. Yeah, reptiles actually do walk among us, and I don't personally believe that, but I'm not.
That shit's wild. But what you can do is you can actually, what I like to do when I encounter people like that, which I encounter a lot of actually, because like that's actually like that's closer to like the libertarian like side where they're like they consider themselves just like against authority in general, or they're just like skeptical, they're kind of paranoid, which I think is a kind of reasonable reaction to the condition we find ourselves in. But for instance, you know, when they say like the Earth is flat, what they're describing is a phenomenological reality. They're not describing it from the scientific hypothesis or perspective.
Right.
They're
like
describing the phenomenological reality of this. And actually, like William Blake describes this as well, that like phenomenologically, the Earth is flat. Like we treat it like it's flat. You know, we act as if it is flat. It appears that way to us. So like in our imaginations, it is like when you learn how to draw, for instance, when you're learning how to draw perspective, you're not learning how to draw perspective on a massive globe. You're learning how to draw it on a plane, on an infinite plane.
Yeah, I mean, okay, that does make sense. And like empirically speaking, it does kind of seem like I go outside. If I were to just to vulgarly express my, reality, the Earth is flat. I get what you're saying, and I try not to be like too like overtly, no, the Earth isn't flat, you retard. Like, you know what I'm saying? I
Yeah,
try to
yeah,
just
yeah.
like
Well, the
bridge
thing
it
is
to a
that you could
different
give
thing.
them skills to like. It was like, well, how do we discover? How do we learn that the Earth is not is like this shape, etc. They'll be like there are things you like. People are just alienated from the actual like history of science, etc., and from the history of like our own production of knowledge over time. That they just like reject it because they reject like it's kind of one sided, right? It's a very one sided rejection of science itself because of this ideological use of trust the science, etc. So I think it's kind of almost like a punk rock thing, right? Where they're like, and I think that they treat it that way, right? Where they're like, fuck science, dude. The
No,
world's fucking flat.
absolutely, without a doubt. All right, well, I don't have anything else. I don't want to keep you bogged up in here. Thanks for the time.
Yeah, for sure, man. Thanks for coming on. All right, Amanita, it's been a while since I talked to you. I'll let you on. What's up? How you doing today? You're up,
Oh,
Amanita.
hi. Thanks. Yeah,
Hi.
love the space. I'm just like wondering about types of work that's multifaceted. I just quit my current job, but I was doing fast food and they had us doing everything. So I was doing cashier service, janitor work, grill work, and some warehouse work as well. So I just been kind of wondering how do people who do both janitor and cashier work fit into this?
Well, the thing is that like the conflation of these classes in that production is part of the problem with those things. Like that's something we would want to ideally reform. Like you shouldn't be forced into playing all of these roles at the same time, right? Like the reason why all of these are conflated together is so that they can make the proletarian work aspects of those things more like the service aspects.
Yeah.
Like they're trying to not like we want to do the opposite. We want to proletarianize service where it exists, where we can make that happen, which means like making it more specialized in that sense. Like you shouldn't have to do all of those things because we should have it so that more people are doing more of those things and we all work less time. Like we want more people engaged in the productive process so that we can all be engaged in so that we can all work less. Ultimately, that's the goal.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense because like what I saw, I was working at McDonald's. I just quit there, and also it's a massive chain, so it's not really a big deal. But like basically, the managers were actually really overworked. Like one of my managers was a very nice young woman, but she was having actual mental breakdowns in the break room because it was just they try to put the entire restaurant on her back, and they had the managers.
Yeah, they put all the downsides on it. Like there's so much exploitation like all the way up, but that like right because it's like a franchise owner is really taking like a lease on this thing. They don't actually really own it because they don't own the IP. So they're really just like it's just a way of offsetting risk for the higher levels of service capital, right? They're like just servicing capital, that's servicing capital, that's servicing capital, and they're just trying to offset risk all the way down onto the lowest level while they're extracting wealth. Like it's just insulating risk all the way, all the way, all the way, all the way, all the way. It's all fucked up. The problem
Yeah.
is, right, is that we don't fix that by having a McDonald's franchise manager union to advocate for their interests. That's not going to change the problem. That's not going to fix the problem ultimately.
Okay, that's a good point. Yeah, because what I saw there was really like it was just constantly deteriorating work conditions as well as like a lot of unsafety issues, especially with like a construction that we had on our building where
like you should
we got
all just walk away. Like ultimately, like it would cost a lot probably in the short term, right? It would definitely cost a lot in the short term. But because literally everybody working there is miserable, nobody's pleased with it, nobody's feeling like they're engaging with anything meaningful while doing it, then everyone should just stop doing it. Everyone at the same time should stop doing it. They should walk away. If your manager walked away with the whole shift, with the whole thing, etc., she's like, I'm fucking done, I'm abandoning this franchise, then it would just disappear.
That's a good point. I did end up quitting, but that's a good point. Thank you.
For sure. All right, let's see. Anyone around? Or I can read this NASCAR thing really quick. You see any thumbs for that? Do some Sweden hate, battle him against the Anglo-Nordic Empire here. All right, I think I'll do that then while we wait for, I don't know. I don't think I'm going to get any more ornery subjects here, even though that's what I'm trying to fish for. It's hard sometimes. They don't want to come out into the light of day. They like sniping from the shadows, but I'll read In the Land of the Cyclops by Karl Ove Knausgaard, is writing about Sweden, which I think is really funny. So, in the land of the Cyclops. It's spring in the land of the Cyclops. The apple trees are in blossom and stand like white sails in a sea of green. The sky is blue, and above the sea, only a few kilometers from where I sit, clouds hang motionless. It's so beautiful, it hurts, and so peaceful. The land is prosperous. The shops are well stocked. Everybody's got what they need and more. But the Cyclopses aren't happy. Many are angry and brimming with hatred, and many are afraid. I've lived here for 13 years, and have yet to understand why there's so much hatred and fear. I look around me and see practically nothing to hate and practically nothing to be afraid of. The reason there's so much hatred among the Cyclops and so much fear is simple, I think. The Cyclops don't want to know about areas of reality that aren't as they think they should be. Not long ago, the Cyclops' prime minister referred to a legitimate political party elected to the country's parliament as Nazis. Everyone knows it's not true, but that doesn't matter. The party thinks differently on a sensitive issue, and so they're Nazis. In any other country, there'd have been an outcry. But in the land of the Cyclopses, it was a reasonable thing to say. The odd thing is that they think it's the same everywhere, in every other country, and nothing can convince them otherwise. The Cyclopses think their view of reality should be shared by everyone, and when they discover that this isn't the case, they become angry. The way they're often angry with their neighbors, the Danes, for instance. The Cyclopses can't handle ambiguity. They don't understand anything that isn't either good or bad, and that makes them angry. That's why they don't like literature. They say they like literature, but the only literature they like is the kind that accords with their view of good and bad, and that isn't literature at all, but something that purports to be literature. Literature is by nature ambiguous, but the Cyclopses don't know that. I'm a writer, and many of the Cyclopses have read my books. Some have got very angry indeed. One Cyclops, writing in their biggest newspaper, Dagens Nyheter, compared me with Anders Behring Breivik. Anders Behring Breivik murdered 77 people, of whom 69 were gunned down one by one, most of them hardly more than children. One of those he murdered, a girl, had been shot in the mouth, but her lips were intact, meaning she must have been shot at point-blank range as she screamed for help or mercy. The Cyclops, I believed I could be compared with the man who did that because of the books I'd written. Another Cyclops wrote that I was a Nazi. The Nazis tried to exterminate an entire people. They burned millions of Jews in incinerators. Many Cyclopses have publicly contended that I'm a misogynist, that I hate women. And now, only last week, another Cyclops writing in Dagens Nyheter has claimed that I'm a literary pedophile who has abused young girls. She writes, too, that I'm pursuing a clandestine homosexual relationship with my best friend behind my wife's back. It's a piece that's full of hatred and disdain, and its aim is to say that there's something dubious about me, something unpleasant, alarming, abnormal, sick. To call it slanderous would be an understatement. It makes me out to be a criminal. So what was my crime? I wrote a novel. This is how the days pass in the land of the Cyclops. The Cyclops get angry and hurl rocks at those who say something they don't like or don't understand. This makes other Cyclopses afraid because they know that if they say something the angry Cyclopses don't like or don't understand, the angry Cyclopses will start hurling rocks at them too. Cyclopses are for this reason either angry or silent. The thing that bothers most the Cyclops is identity. The relationship between women and men confounds them because it isn't unambiguous. And the relationship between people of their own culture and those of other cultures, which isn't unambiguous either, confounds them too. For that reason, the Cyclopses are never so angry as when they're talking about gender or immigration. These aren't things you can be for or against, yet that's exactly what they demand. So everything that exists between those categories, everything that exists in the margins, isn't seen, isn't talked about, but it still exists. The Cyclopses realize this, but they're unable to understand it, and so they become angrier and even more silent. In the mountainous country I come from, it'll soon be our national day. Everyone puts on their finest clothes and goes out into the streets to wave flags, to watch the children's parades and shout hurrah. Many Cyclopses are angry about this. They say it's Nazism. I've tried to explain that we're just happy about our country. But look at those flags, the Cyclopses say. That's nationalism. And nationalism is Nazism. In fact, to the Cyclopses, rather a lot of things are evil. Once, at a dinner party, I got into trouble for saying I believed my wife had a different kind of attachment to our child than I had, seeing as how she'd carried the child inside her own body, given birth to it in pain, and was now feeding her from her breast. The Cyclopses said this was a misogynistic viewpoint. I've lived here for so long now that I sometimes find myself wondering if the Cyclopses are right, and that there's something wrong with me. that I actually am a literary pedophile, a mass murderer, or Nazi. Why else would they say I was? The first novel I wrote, which is soon to be published in the land of the Cyclops in the Cyclops' own language, is about a 26-year-old teacher who becomes infatuated with a 13-year-old pupil of his. He becomes involved with her, they have sex, and he takes flight. Why did I write it? Didn't I know that having sex with a minor is against the law, abhorrent, and despicable? Didn't I know it was immoral? Yes, of course I did. Why did I write about such a thing if I knew it was immoral, if I knew it was wrong? This is the question the Cyclopses ask. Their own answer is that I did so because I'm a man, a misogynist, and a literary pedophile. The immorality confounds them, and the lust confounds them, because lust in this case isn't the way lust should be. So they get angry and hurl rocks. And the few writers in the land of the Cyclops who know what literature is become afraid. They haven't the courage to stand up for the novel because that would make them pedophiles themselves. It would make them oppressors of women. In other words, it would make them bad human beings. So nearly all writers in the land of the Cyclops are silent. I understand them not wanting to be seen as bad human beings. I don't hold it against them. But I know, and I think they know too, deep down, that by not taking a stand, they become worse writers. All my books have been written with a good heart, including the one in which a young man has sex with a child. All my books are genuine attempts to understand what it means to be human in the here and now, in our society, and in our time. By genuine, I mean that they don't ignore the sides of us that are bad and deserving of criticism. All the weaknesses, the flaws and shortcomings, all the envy, all the self-assertion, all the ambition, all the hatred and contempt, including self-hatred and self-contempt, and all the lust. Even the lust that's directed toward the forbidden. And yes, I'm a man, so that's my perspective. At the center of these books stands the issue of identity. What is it that forms us? What is it that makes us become the people we become, makes us think what we think, feel what we feel, do what we do? The books explore the influence of our parents, the influence of the kids next door, schoolmates, and the local environment, the influence of our wider society and culture. The roles were designated in the ways in which they alter. Being a parent was one thing for our grandparents, another for our parents, and is something else for us. Being a man or a woman was one thing for our grandparents, another for our parents, and is something else for us. When I was a boy, I was fond of flowers, fond of the color red, fond of reading, and I used to cry a lot, all of which was considered wrong, and I was told so. When I reached puberty, they called me femi, meaning that I was girlish, feminine, and in adolescence I did everything I could to play down this side of me, everything I could to come across as masculine. I felt so immensely vulnerable, and perhaps because of the relationship I had with my father, he was an unstable figure whose ways were unpredictable. I recall myself aching for a simpler reality, and indeed, there's always been a regressive element of my personality that yearns all the way back to childhood when others were responsible for my life. A yearning for simplicity, a yearning for the unambiguous, the clear-cut, and the tangible is something one finds in all totalitarian movements. It's what they appeal to. In my case, this yearning came together with a yearning for innocence, for the pre-sexual, the pre-adult, and the world of the child, perhaps because of my own sexuality then, and I'm talking about my teenage years, appeared to me to be so unmanageable. The only thing I wanted, which was to have sex with someone, seemed so utterly impossible to me, I didn't even know how to go about it. Oh, the loneliness. In that first novel of mine, I wrote about all these feelings. The main character was 26 years old, as immature as he was narcissistic, but it didn't matter how much I wrote about him. I couldn't get a hold on it, couldn't make it work. Then I put him in a classroom. I've been there myself when I was 18, teaching 13-year-olds. And all these feelings, this entire spectrum of regression and progression, passivity and lust, fear of authority and yearning for authority, found their shape. My character became infatuated with a 13-year-old girl. I knew what I was doing. For 2 weeks, I suffered all the torments of hell. Could I write about this? Wasn't it speculative? Wasn't it taboo? Wouldn't everyone think it was something I approved of? This was the risk, but at the same time, everything hinged on it. And in that story, all the subjects I wanted to explore could take shape. Writing a novel about something that happens isn't the same as condoning it. Whatever the circumstance, the material is chosen because something meaningful can be expressed by it, something that doesn't exist before the circumstance brings it to light. That's what literature does. Surely no one thinks crime writers condone murder just because they write about it. I exploited a 13-year-old girl by using her in a novel, but she exists only in the novel. So of what exactly does the exploitation consist? And where is the danger? In the most recent newspaper piece, the Cyclops highlights Monica Fagerholm's Diva as an example of a novel in which a 13-year-old girl is given her own voice, her own life, her own dignity, in contrast to my own novel, in which she's merely exploited and consistently seen through the eyes of a man. I read Fagerholm's novel when I was writing my own, and I loved it. It brims with the only thing that really matters when it comes to literature: freedom. Later, I wrote a book focusing on a 13-year-old boy in which everything is seen from his perspective, and in writing it, I was trying to do the same thing as Fagerholm does in her book, to depict the human life the way it was at a certain time, to uncover its dignity, its language, and to be honest toward it. I failed. The book I wrote wasn't great, but it does possess freedom, and that freedom is the reason I write, and the reason literature exists. What is literary freedom? Or more interestingly, what is its opposite? Its opposite is to say how literature must be. It is to say how literature must think. It is to say, these thoughts are amiss, they're wrong, this isn't the way we want things, you can't do this, you can't say this, you can't say this. This is the literature of the Cyclops. The book in which I describe a young man's infatuation with a 13-year-old girl is a novel about a violation, but it's also a novel about regression and immaturity. What made me write about that? Immaturity is all around us. We live in a culture that cultivates youth, cultivates simplicity, cultivates the puerile. Switch on the TV any evening you like and you'll see an example. A novel is the opposite. It seeks complexity. It seeks diversity of meaning. It seeks truth in places apart from where truth is sloganized or kept in a frame, where it's held firm and unable to move, rigid and immutable. Even a novel that deals with simplicity and regression is complex and expansive, and this is so by virtue of it being a novel. Otherwise, it's something else. I depicted an immature young man who pursues a child, a wrongdoer who pursues an innocent, and although the novel is realistic in nature and deals with the relationship specifically, its metaphor extends into society and into its time. Is it a valid metaphor? I don't know, and there's no way I can be sure, but what I do as a writer is to write about my own feelings, fascinations, thoughts, and insights, in the belief that I'm but one of many, and that this inner validity is matched by an outer validity. This is always an unknown when you're writing, and the uncertainty of it represents a huge risk. It's a risk that's never run by critics or literary scholars, and my experience is that practically none of them is even aware it exists. That doesn't mean I'm taking anything away from their role. Someone has to read the work and put into context what it's trying to do, or say that what it's trying to do is not achieved. But what literary criticism must never say is that what the work is trying to do must not be done. If a novel wants to look at beauty in Nazism, the critic can contend that there is no beauty in Nazism, but not that the novel shouldn't be looking at it as if it's there. Nazism, of course, had beauty. If it didn't, no one would have been seduced by it. That beauty, which we know to be wrong, is something only a novel can describe. Why should it do that? Because Nazism had beauty. All other institutions of society tell us this is how it must be. Everywhere we go, we're confronted by rules and regulations, orders written and unwritten, all of which are devised to make life work for us as smoothly and painlessly as possible in the fairest and most equal way. I'm not against what's right, but I do insist on the freedom to say that what's wrong exists too. We know that drinking probably isn't good, but we drink anyway. We know that yelling at our kids isn't good, but we yell at them anyway. We know that envy isn't good, but we're envious anyway. We know that bitterness isn't good, but we're bitter anyway. What we know we ought to be is clear and plain to us. What we are, in spite of what we know, is something we must hide. It has no voice, and it is our secret. It leads us into feelings of guilt and shame. We smother it, and it destroys our self-esteem. We keep silent, as we must, each of us on our own. But society as a whole cannot be silent, cannot pretend that it doesn't exist, because it does exist. It's here with us now, and must be given a voice so it can be acknowledged. Not the voice of morality, which tells us thou shalt not in the voice of the media, which reduces it, but the voice of literature, which says this exists. It might not be good, but it exists. It's here with us now, and we must address it as a reality. What happens to a society when it stops addressing what it knows to exist and yet refuses to acknowledge? A society that instead of looking truth in the eye, looks away. The arts and culture pages of the Cyclops' newspapers are hostile to literature because morality there reigns above literature and ideology above morality. I don't know any other country in the world, apart from totalitarian states, where writers are so invisible in public discussion. Literature is not free in the land of the Cyclops. Its hand and feet are bound. You never see a writer stand up on their own in the land of the Cyclops. You never see a writer risk anything in public. It's hardly surprising. To be called a pedophile is the Cyclops' biggest newspaper is not a pleasant experience. It's not the end of the world, of course, and it is a legitimate opinion, but there's no other country I know of where literature professors call their writers pedophiles and tell them what they should and shouldn't write about. That could only happen in the land of the Cyclops. So that's not Mouse Guard. I think representing the ideal, really, like what is he doing but, being fucking real as shit. Like, he's just being honest as hell about a very, very difficult thing that he actually has gone to. I don't think he's dissimulating or trying to display, cover up his anxiety of all these things being true. He even admits that these people, all of these accusations, almost make him think that they're right, because it's so brutalizing, this fucking rule of the Cyclopses, which is really the same in Sweden as it is here amongst the people who think we need to, quote unquote, be more like Sweden. Anyway, I thought I'd read that because I just got a copy of it in Cambridge the other day, and I think that's one of his best works. I think he's a really great writer. If you're looking for anything good to read, his 6 volumes, My Struggle, A Time for Everything, even the novel that he describes there is a great novel. He's just a great writer. It's because he is a free person. He's trying to express freely with fidelity to the truth. And that's what's most important in a writer. That's the most important thing in a writer. Everything else is trivial. Everything else is trivial. People you can not like his style or his subject matter or his pacing or any of these things, but it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter. You can have all these sorts of issues, but he's a man devoted to the free expression of the truth, and he has a fidelity to it, and he suffered on behalf of his production. That's all you can ask. Anyway, I've got Y'all the Breaky here. What's up? Y'all the Breaky.
Oh, hello. I didn't know I actually requested there, but I might as well just pop and say hello.
Okay.
Speaking of novels, I just finished Your Own.
What'd you think?
I know it was.
Was it any good?
Yeah, no, it was. It was really. I thought the little childhood holiday home thing. I thought that was very sweet, very relatable. That kind of innocent first kind of crush or love or whatever is very kind of haunting and having that haunting throughout the character's life. I thought it was, and the ending as well, very unusual, but I appreciate books that end like that. I love Philip K. Dick, and they kind of ends in a kind of a dissolve a lot of his work, so I do like that.
Well, thanks, man. Yeah, I was trying to do the best I could to write about that. I was really trying to write about I could explain sort of I had similar motivations to NASCAR. That was an extended metaphor, I think, for the state of young adolescents, particularly those who are interested in becoming artists, etc. in these times.
Yeah, I honestly, the character, I think you could almost label as an incel. There seemed to be, but it's much deeper than just simply I hate women or I hate it. There's a darker brooding, but still hopeful.
He never even knew them. That's the real thing. That's the point, right? Whereas some people have said that there's still some type of incel misogyny in my writing or whatever, but it's writing from this character's perspective and what at the end, right? He's being honest when he says that he never knew this person he was on a date with in the first place.
Yeah.
He has no he never knew them at all. That's, I don't know.
No, it's a great metaphor, and I actually am I just really enjoyed it, and I think, I don't know if you'd be happy or whatever, but my phone broke during for the whole month, so I was working, and on my lunch break I'd be in the back of a van reading books, something that I actually I'm dyslexic, so I literally, the idea of literature is an enemy for me for the majority of my life through school, and it's really only in the last in my 20s that I've actually oh shit, I actually can read, and it's actually enjoyable.
Yeah, I think that a lot of the times it's actually so if you're reading in English, especially reading in English is you're not actually reading the words is the thing. They've done studies on this, you don't actually read the words.
It's the shapes, yeah.
it's the shapes. So it's like you really just start to identify the shapes of the words more than the words themselves. And that is like, I think I don't know, maybe I have like a regressive take on dyslexia or whatever, but I think that takes longer for people to be able to do in certain circumstances, because it's like a actually very difficult and taxing process that we just kind of take for granted, right? And
Yeah.
we're like, and we like put people in like reading classes, et cetera, where
Mhm.
it's like they rate people by how good they can read at like a young age group, and people just get abused and bullied like if they're not like, you know, following along and what the developmental path is supposed to be, like the mean or ideal developmental path for the skill. But you can learn how to read whenever, you know. People back in the day, they used to be illiterate for like almost their whole lives, and then they would like learn how to read when they're like in their 20s or something, and then they'd read a
Mhm.
lot. Like, you know, anyone can learn how to read at any time. Sometimes it's harder for others than others, you know. There's a diversity of like mental talents or acuities or whatever, but I think everyone can learn how to read.
Yeah, no, and I think a lot of it, like as much as like there was a lot of help given to me, but there was like, you know, getting taken out of a class to go to another class. It's quite
Yeah,
stigmatizing,
it's
and it does
shaming.
like
Yeah, it
it's shaming,
sucks.
and I do think learn helplessness does play a huge factor. And it was a case of I got to a stage where I could just go, all right, I tried my best, and that's it, you
Well, that's
know?
actually you like maximizing your opportunities there, because it's like, okay, well, like it's sort of like if you don't want to do a job and you just do a purposefully bad job of it, so no one will have confidence in you doing a good job of it,
They
then you
won't
don't get
ask you.
asked to do it
Yeah,
anymore.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So like in school, like you're asked to like read out in the class, and like actual um orating is actually it's a bit of, you know, it's much different. It took me a while to realize that like you can just look at a page and then you kind of just skim through the sentence and you get it. But then if you have to start and actually like pronounce each word, the sentence doesn't make any sense. Like
Oh yeah, it's like
that's where I
reading
was getting into
poetry.
it.
If you really learn how to do that by like reading poetry,
Reading
by like
poet, yeah, exactly. Yeah,
performing.
yeah. No, that's actually one of the things that if I actually sit and I try and like read out a poem, it doesn't work. But if I'm just there and you get the rhythm, you find the rhythm in a sentence. It's like it's kind of crazy that how quick I could read, and I was actually impressing myself that I had like 30 minutes of a break, and I'm just flying through chapters of other books and stuff like that. So yeah, no, it was quite nice. I have a new phone now, so I don't know if I'm going to keep this habit up, but
Oh,
if
you
I'm
can
going to
always
bring a
download
book into
the
work.
PDFs. You can always download the PDFs off LibGen directly to a smartphone. So
I
just
know,
that's
but
what
I
I would
don't
do.
like reading off.
Yeah, I know
I
reading
mean,
off the
yeah, I
screen
spend most of my
sucks,
time
but
fucking reading stuff on Twitter anyway. So, but like, I don't like.
yeah,
It's just like too bright or something like that. But yeah, no,
yeah, but
it's just it like I don't know. Like, actually, I've been thinking about this. Um, I think in your definition, I would be proletariat, but I wouldn't see that myself as that. Granted, it's a family business, but I'm doing like manual labor, so I don't know where I'm in. The funny thing is
well,
that my dad
you
would.
own like you and your family are like basically like, you know, you own your means of production. Or maybe you're leasing it. I don't know what your exact conditions are.
No, no, no. We that's like a third generational thing. So, but the thing is, it's funny that my dad would call himself working class, but he would call us middle class, because you know we've prospered or whatever. And I'm looking at it, I'm here like,
Well, he's just talking about
I,
appearance.
I no, I had like I was like thinking of it like coming on and just kind of putting it to you that like we're kind of somewhat uh diametrically opposed or something, that we're in two different classes in a sense, that you're in the service and I'm in the proletariat, but
Yeah.
I kind of have more of an empathy toward a service, and you're the opposite. So but then I went into a shopping center today.
It's like the thing is like this is the type of work that I want to do. Like I've always wanted to be a writer my entire life. I've wanted to do nothing other than what I do. Like this is the only thing I've ever wanted to do. And it's the only thing I've really truly pursued in doing. And I think that's like a spiritual thing. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But the thing is, right, is that like what I've wanted to do is like I've wanted to do this on behalf of others. And I could actually bring this back to like, you know, those popcorn reading things in school. I saw how it tortured every other kid who didn't like reading as much or like maybe wasn't as good at it or whatever way back then. And I was like, can you just let me read it for everyone? Like, can I just read
Mhm.
it out loud and we don't have to like go around and like shame people for mispronouncing words and having everyone cringe at their like, you know, struggling to do this? You know, like, can't we just like have someone read it for them? You know, like, can I just read
Yeah.
this, and instead
But that
of
was the
like
thing.
we're all
My
torturing
favorite English
ourselves with it.
teachers were the ones who would just, kind of like let us to our own devices in a sense.
Yeah,
And instead of having that like standardized, like we're all reading To Kill a Mockingbird and we're all going to say a page each. Like that's like it's The Sims, and the
I
more in that setting that you're going to get better. It's like no, I'm just going to sit there and I'm just going to be like petrified of being called to ask, and then the teacher wouldn't ask, and so I would never get better. So it is a kind of a catch
yeah
22. But like just the fact that like I've had such a change in how I would see, like I'm buy books. I actually like them as physical items. I haven't read a huge amount of them, but they're there and I can flick and peruse through them. But it's something that I would have seen as like, oh, it's a pointless medium, you know?
yeah
Like
yeah
I can
yeah.
watch a movie and do it better, basically. But it's like it does something so much deeper, and
It's because it's so low fidelity that you have to use your imagination.
Mhm.
Like you don't have to imagine things when you're watching a movie. Like it's literally imagined for you, you know?
Yeah.
So it's like it can lead like if you're only consuming these things that are imagining things for you or whatever, then like you're like even like film criticism, like if you're like a real like really interested in film, you end up not talking about like what's like actually on the screen, but a lot of the time like what's off the screen, like the actual like
Mhm.
decisions and things made, like how things are framed, etc., and stuff like that. It's not really the same type of discourse as like literary criticism, where it's all about like what is in the like what's absolutely there in the text,
Yeah.
and then like what the consequences of those things being in the text is for how one should or ought to imagine it. You might say.
Yeah, I mean the furthest a lot of criticism of media, or like especially video games, is this is what happens. Like
Yeah,
with
yeah, yeah.
Marvel movies, I forget who someone's tweet or something was talking about, like just in the Marvel movies when you hear people talking about criticizing Marvel, they just talk not even criticizing, but just literally the new review. They just talk about what happened in the film. They don't mention even like actors' performances or anything like that. But obviously in literature, you can immediately go into themes, go into all these things, and then people call you schizo if you start like looking at a Kubrick movie in a different way or something like that. Even though
Yeah,
that's what
yeah,
it's
yeah.
meant for. It's meant to be interpretive in a.
Well, it's like the question's always like at the end of the day, we use reading as a metaphor for understanding, right? Where it's like
Mhm.
what is the right way to read this situation, even, or it's like when you're reading someone's face, like oh no, you misread my face. I'm not actually mad. I'm thinking about something else, etc. You know what I mean? So that's why like reading has this sort is like reading is like the universal skill, it's the universal science or whatever, however you want to put it. Because like language is like the base is the reality. Like we exist within like language is how reality is disclosed to us. You could say there's like the language of the forest, like the way that the geography reveals itself to us through various affordances and like a type of like environmental psychology. The total environment is speaking to us, and we read and interpret it. In this is like where the origin of these faculties comes from. Even like if you want to go like even if you want to do like an evolutionary psychology reasoning of this or whatever, which I think is backwards or whatever, but it's all the same. Like I went for a walk yesterday on this new trail that opened after this guy donated his family's land that they've had for like 3 generations to the town, so it became like the commons. And there's new like hiking trail and stuff there, and he was giving us a tour and talk and explaining like all the things and like his memories of the land, etc. I actually encountered one of my English teachers from when I was in high school, like one of my freshman English teachers, and we were talking. It was everyone on the walk was talking about how they were reading the landscape in different ways. We had a tree biologist who was describing all of the various blights on some of the trees and talking about the hawthorn. She's like, "Oh, look, here. I see this. I know. I recognize the leaves. I know how to read trees. Like this is a chestnut, not a what is it? Is it a chestnut? Yeah, this is a chestnut tree. This is like an American chestnut tree, and these were used to be the majority of the trees here until they were wiped out, etc. And it's like I couldn't have read that from that landscape because I didn't have the hermeneutical faculty to read that from the landscape. But that person could read that in the landscape for us and make it meaningful to us. And then this other person was like, yes, well, I'm like I'm very much involved in like archaeology and things and like Native American stuff. And as you can see here, this is actually a land weir. This is actually a land weir. So this wall wasn't for shepherding for this wall that was made here has been here for a very long time because the point was to direct deer down this flow in the landscape because deer will not jump over that because they don't want to exert too much energy. So you would have people scare the deer when you're on a hunting party, and that as a Native American, and they would run up this path where you would have people stationed with bow and arrows, etc. It's called a land weir, and they do this for fish and things like that as well. And then we encountered another rock wall, and someone said, "I know that this was used to pen sheep because it's a lattice wall, and I know how to read different types of rock walls." And it's like that's how everything's mediated. That's how everything becomes meaningful to us, and how we can disclose like our readings of things in speech to each other. That's like why this is what we do. It's like everyone's doing it all the time. It's what everyone does. It's like it's the universal thing that defines humanity, I think. Anyway, I don't know how it could be argued against. Oh wow, my parents' cat just came up to me with a mouse that it caught. What's up, bud? Good job, dude. All right, Demir, he dropped off. I'll let Domenico David Banner, Inca Sumerian follow a patron saint Rumo Remak. I don't know what that means, but okay. What's up?
Hey, Logo.
What's up, man?
Hey, thanks for doing that reading, and a lot of what you're talking about, I think, is already pertinent and explanatory to maybe my question. I'm a comic book artist, I guess, right? Graduated college. Went to
Have you at least produced a comic book, man? Come on, you
yeah,
gotta tell me you at least have written one. Okay.
I've done that shit. No, but I think I think when you're younger, you're led into a bunch of shit and self-belief, right? And I went to art school, total mistake, right? And then now I graduated, and I realized that like what I do isn't going to get published by like some Marvel or DC bullshit, right?
No, it's not. Yeah.
No,
Well, I mean, you have to, if you wanted to do that, you'd have to have a totally different set of skills, which is the skills of getting employed there in the first place, and
yes,
like getting
yes,
the,
and it's
yeah,
not
yeah,
the
yeah.
'70s anymore. It's not the same system. It's more
Oh,
more
no,
like
they're
they
looking for
choose
something
you.
totally different.
Yes.
Yeah.
But my point is now I'm left in the town that I graduated in, which I like. But looking for job and trying to justify, a lot of the options here. It's a tourist town. It's all retail. It's service industry. There's some warehouses. There's a port authority. But I'm just kind of like trying to find a fucking way for your life right now that, and also,
You might want to trade, like honestly,
really,
you have a desire to produce things,
yeah,
right? You have like an artist mind, like you want to like be doing like a work where like you're engaged with like the production of something that you like put yourself into, or at least making like some type of creative decisions or whatever.
absolutely, yeah,
So I'm sure there's at least something close to that nearby. Like for instance, like I was happy when I worked at. I was gonna, if I stuck around in Texas forever and like COVID hadn't happened,
yeah,
I probably would have. I was going to start working as a brewer, like as an apprentice, is what I was gonna do, because I was like, this seems like this is like a creative thing, like
yeah,
I'm interested in the processes. I learned like so much about it. I was friends with a bunch of different brewers from breweries all over, and people were like, yeah, you could work for me, like I'll teach you how to do it, like you. And I was like, hell yeah, I'd rather be doing that than being a bartender, even, like I'd
absolutely, yeah,
rather like be producing it. So I don't know, there's probably something like again, like we have like a mostly service sector economy, unfortunately, especially if you're in like a touristy area.
yeah.
It's mostly like tourist servicing and things
No,
like
but
that.
but
But
brewing's a good idea. And there's a lot of breweries around me and that kind of shit. But yeah, also
yeah.
I wanted to ask too. I mean, I think recently I've been having a hard time justifying entertainment in a large part, even though it's been my like lifelong obsession, right? Like I don't think you get to the point of claiming you're a comic book artist unless you're like this media obsessed reject. Um, but like justifying entertainment in the means of like where we are right now and its long lasting nature. I don't know, like being in that sector seems very disheartening and kind of hard to me to justify in some
Well, I would
senses.
say if you want to make comic books, do you know
Yeah,
Simon Hanselman?
yeah, I love Simon. Yeah,
Well, I mean, we all love Simon
yeah,
Hanselman, like one of the best, like good to go, like amazing. I love
yeah,
Simon Hanselman.
yeah,
But like, how the fuck did he or she, I don't know what he wants to go by or she wants to go by these
yeah,
days.
yeah, yeah.
How did that happen? Like, how did that happen? It was like
Itself,
they just kept making stuff.
I
They just kept making stuff when
yeah,
it came, like all the time, like so much production. Like that's really what it is. It's like I say like if you're a writer if you write every day. Like if you're writing all the time.
That's
If you write
true.
every
Yeah.
day, then you're a writer. So if you're a comic book artist, then you should be working on comics every single day.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
as much as you
Yeah.
possibly can. Even if you have to do other stuff, like the world doesn't like owe you recognition for your art. Like you
No,
you know what I mean?
totally.
You have to
Totally. That's
provide
my
like that
that's my
service, you know?
issue. It is
I
that
know,
like
I
a
know.
selfish nature of creating, right? And
This is
it
like what my
seems
novel's about, you know? I wrote it all
yeah.
like that's what my novel
I
is sort
need
of
to
like
read
dealing
it,
with its
dude.
themes.
But
Yeah.
no, I think you're right. And talking to oldies, you know, I've gone to cons and you know, those are really just business transaction places if you're working. But you know, it seems like that's really all it is, and all you can hope for is production and output and how much you're doing of that.
Yeah, it's like how much does it really mean to you, you know? Like if
Yeah.
you're gonna do like would you do like what if I told you that you're
Mhm.
gonna work your entire life on a comic book and no one will know about it until 20 years after you die. And then it will be recognized as one of the greatest works of like world literature of all time or something. Like what if I told you like I was an angel came down, I was like,
Yeah.
I'll give you this gift. I'll give you this gift that you can work on this your whole life. You're gonna suffer, you'll receive no recognition for it whatsoever in your lifetime. In fact, people will consider you crazy. People will make fun of you perpetually. Would you take that offer?
Yeah, absolutely.
So then it's like you just act like that's the offer you've been given.
That's so true. Okay. Wow. Yeah, love that. Yeah, also, I don't know, you know, my perspective on because I, you know, grew up loving superheroes, right? I think Superman replaced God for me in a lot of ways, right?
Well, I mean, he's kind of
Sacrilegiously.
supposed to represent like Christ, like
No,
or like
he is
Moses or
though,
something.
and I
Yeah.
think a lot of my trouble with modern media and like the whole movie thing, which I think has ruined, you know, my interest, is
Yeah, yeah.
that like comics are Marxist in nature. Superheroes, their problem solving is worldwide, it's global, and it's like I don't know.
Yeah.
All the messaging that's there has always been there, and it has a very Marxist tint. But then how you have the world portraying these characters now is very misrepresentative, I think, of the ability that comics have to promote and like morph
To deal with those issues.
kids.
Well, what you're
Yes,
really seeing
yes,
is like the
yeah,
ideology in this, right? Like I actually had that I was like someone said this right when I was like talking about like, oh, are CIA agents proletarian? And they said, well, if they're working in the CIA as a hobby and they're a barista and they're day like they work at the CIA barista, the Starbucks at the CIA. And I was like, you know what? This is a great comic book that will probably exist. Like Marvel will be publishing this. Like it'll be like a spin off of Squirrel Girl or something,
yeah,
where it's
some
about
bullshit.
the part time sex worker, OnlyFans CIA agent. That would be like a hero, you know. And it's like the
Yeah,
artist, you know, that's the writer would be writing this from this ideological perspective, and the artist would be a furry, and it would be extremely
yes,
pornographic, and it would be for children. And it
it'd
would
be
be
the
about
most
defending
successful
NATO.
thing in the world.
They'd be going over to Ukraine to like help Zelensky, you know, Zelensky guest episode, things like that. And
Dude,
no, it wouldn't
yeah,
be a success at
Zelensky's a
all, ironically.
villain.
It literally wouldn't be a
No,
success at all, but it would
no, I think you're
exist.
right. Yeah,
The thing is that that's like because who would if you say that you wouldn't want to make that, like what are you saying? Are you saying that shouldn't exist? Like that must not be, you know what I mean? Like that's the
yeah,
ideological production we're in now. I don't know.
yeah.
I think it's like I'm like I'm like a DC fanboy, I guess, when it comes down
Really?
to
Yeah.
the
No, that's
dialectic
great to hear
there.
because I think I'm forming that like you know, a lot of successful people love superheroes. You look at Elvis, you look at Ye, maybe
Yeah.
you know, other stuff like that because it is a really
It's
motivating
American folk
idea.
stories. It's an
It is,
American. It's a
and
part of the American tradition. Like it's part of our folk like etymology.
yeah,
Like which is like Paul Bunyan is a fucking superhero. Like John Henry is a
absolutely,
superhero.
absolutely. I love those guys as a kid, just hearing stories. You know, myth making. Anyways, yeah, okay. Well, thank you so much for talking to me, man.
For sure. Oh, I just want to
Yeah.
run this by you. This is so. Are you like DC, right? Because you're talking about Superman. You don't get like Marvel. Fuck Marvel.
No,
Marvel
fuck
shit's always
Marvel.
sucked.
Fuck Marvel shit.
So this is. I'll
Fuck
tell you the
Marvel.
reason why.
Yeah,
Like the origins of those two things, like the origins
yeah,
of those mythoses, came from two totally different motivations, really. So it's like
yeah,
DC is detective comics. So it comes out of already this pulp literature of America, where we had tons and tons of detective stories. We love detective stories. We were very
for
good at
sure.
making detective stories. Edgar Allan Poe wrote like the archetype of like detective stories, like with Dupin, who then becomes like, then Conan Doyle, his
Yes.
Sherlock Holmes is literally a criticism of Edgar Allan Poe's theory of detection, of hermeneutics. It's like it's
Yeah.
in an
Yeah.
antagonistic relation. So
Wow.
DC emerges from this older tradition, like Zorro, or like the masked, like the guy, the cowboy who like comes into town, like putting in the law,
Yeah.
like in this
Bass
lawless
Reeves
area.
kind of shit.
Yeah, yeah. So it's from this much older tradition, or it's like, drawing from like Nathaniel Hawthorne stories and things like that. But Marvel existed to differentiate itself from DC, like when they really got popping, like in the '60s and stuff. And what they did was they were like, we're not tying ourselves to this older tradition of literature. What we're doing is we're writing commentary on the exact issues of the day. So we have to invent these new things, which are just representing these
Yes.
this particular like new class that exists. So
And their
instead of
foils are identity. Their foils are identity, and it's not productive work.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like Batman,
Where
like
I feel like
I hate when people are
no,
like, Batman is just a fucking rich guy who goes
it's
out
the
and beats the
stupidest thing in
mentally
the
ill.
world.
And
He's
it's
the
like,
best Marxist out there. like
yeah,
that is
Alex,
what you
Batman is
do
the
with
one
your wealth.
true
That
authentic
is what you
Marxist.
do with your wealth. Yes.
That's why I loved, absolutely adore the latest Batman movie. I think it's beautiful. Like, I think it's a
Really,
beautiful work
yeah.
of art. I think it's incredible. Like, I call
I
this
think
the
it's better than
emo
what
tanky
we've
Caesar.
gotten.
The emo tanky Caesar Batman. Like, he's like a
I like
true.
how, yeah, he's truly autistic in that, and I think that's a fair point. Also, like, I think the broad misconception of Batman too is that he's a regular man, which he's not. Like, this is a person who's gone through a kind of transfiguration of self that has evolved into something else.
He literally
That
does nothing but suffer on behalf of the people. That's all he does. And
exactly,
he's a human being. He's a human being, not
yes,
like a god man. He's like a human being. So he's
no,
like the
that's
Christian. He's like the
yeah.
Puritan,
Yeah, and DC is so better at making these kind of Greek allegories in a way than I think Marvel has, because Marvel focuses on these social.
Let me differentiate here further.
Yeah,
DC
sure.
draws always from Hebraic and the Bible. It draws all of its power from the Bible, whereas Marvel draws all of its power from paganism.
Wow. Yeah.
That's why.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, yeah. No, I think that's bullshit. They all have characters named after gods, but I do think DC is a focus on proletarian nature.
Well, it's
And
because
their
like
stories often to do with people, and it is groundwork. And if you look at how the JSA organizes itself, or the JLA, it's kind of these testing profiles for like what you would do to be helpful. And at the end of the day, it's just like, don't let people die, right?
yeah,
Which seems to be the main motive for everybody. Is like death is
life is like the ultimate value. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And in that sense, it evades any kind of political aspirations, because it is
Well, that's
purely
really
focused
like
on life.
that's like the Hebrew. That's Deuteronomy.
Wow,
I
yeah.
lay before you the choice between life and death. Choose life.
Absolutely, dude. Well, that's the sad thing, is like we've killed our heroes in a way. Like, Superman presentation right now is not great, but I think Superman is like should be the American thing. Sure, you're right. And
we have the negation of it. Like, we're actually like the Marvel being so ascendant in things is because there's like a negation of that type of archetypal, like the closer to like archetypal or romantic style, the romantic tragedies of the DC universe, in favor of these sort of just like kind of satires, like on themselves, like the Marvel films don't even take themselves seriously, because at the end of the day, most of them are about making sure that the movie everything that happened in the movie was meaningless, and it actually didn't happen. It's all written away.
They do
like that's
do
in
that,
like every single one. It all is
every single one writes.
It's all the
itself
great
out
reset.
Of the book.
It's all the great reset.
yeah, no, totally. That's actually true. That's actually really true. Yeah, Marvel sucks. DC rules.
Whereas everything in DC is like permanent. Like, Batman's parents will always be dead.
It's
and it's like he's always going to have to deal with that. It's never going to be resolved.
Yeah, yeah.
It's about like these tensions existing for eternity. Like, the battle of good and evil exists for eternity.
And that's why he has to have a family. That's why he has to grow and spread in a way. Is like this is a force, a crusade, and it requires help. It requires abundance.
Yeah. I mean, I'm gonna say Dude, if I like when I was a kid, all I wanted to do was write Batman. That's all I ever wanted to do. I just wanted to write
Really?
Batman stories for sure, dude.
No, I
I've
mean,
loved
same
Batman
here.
forever.
Lifelong. Yeah. That's the struggle though, is growing up and realizing all of it's just like a fucking charade.
Yeah, I
And
mean, I
if
tried
you want to
back in the
make,
day to get an
yeah,
internship at Vertigo because I was
really,
like
wow.
Vertigo fucking rock because I was like
No,
reading all
Vertigo
the '90s.
rules. If
I was reading all the
Vertigo was still
'90s Vertigo
here,
stuff.
I'd be
Yeah,
happy.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I was
I'd
like,
have a job if Vertigo was still here.
I was like, yo, I was like, yo, give me John Constantine. Let me write John Constantine. Like, come on.
Yes, yeah. Total pro labor. Yeah, John's
Yeah,
a great thing to happen. Yeah, cool. Well, thanks for chatting about this. Yeah.
for sure, man.
I'll let
All right.
you get to other people. Yeah.
Word. It's just Mage. We're gonna talk about One Piece for what's up, Mage? What's up, my dude? I'll let you on. You're not in Japan yet, are you? You must be going this weekend.
Oh my God, holy shit. You put me on right as my mom called me. That was so weird. Hello.
LOL. What's up, dude?
Not much. I leave for Japan tomorrow morning. Um
Oh, hell yeah.
yeah, wait, give me a second. Put me back in literally 1
Oh,
second.
okay.
I need to leave because the
All right.
audio's fucked
It's all
up.
right, Mage. All right. Bye, dude. Oh man, he's been trying to get on. I was like, okay, fine, I'll let you back on. Mage is my boy though. He was hanging out with me last weekend. He's a good kid. I love Mage. All right. Well, does anyone want to come on? I don't know. I've already done some readings and things. Have I produced enough content for you all today on this rainy October, chilly day? All right. I think I'm done, guys. Have a blessed day.